watching at home and not able to hear me talk about crime comics and print on demand. Bummed.
There it is.
All better?
Yeah, we're good.
So as I was saying, if anybody has 2 of those print on demand book machines at home, send one here. I can't imagine how big those things are. We used to get like at the print shop I worked at, we would get new copy machines periodically because they were always like leased. And I mean, they were like 12 feet long. You know, those machines that could do everything.
Right.
I can't imagine the book version of that has to be just like a lumber mill setup.
Yeah, because you would need those like bales of paper too.
Yeah, you would need large amounts of paper. Although if you're doing one at a time, I guess the paper's not outrageous like volume, but yeah, it's a good bit. You're right, I am a little bit off center, but not a big deal.
Get yourself comfortable, man.
That's comfortable. That's good.
Because you know it's actually it's not very good because no, this is me. This was me. No, we're good. But I say get comfortable, man. Happy belated from Tall Matt.
Yeah,
Jimmy.
thanks everybody for the birthday wishes, man. I heard from a ton of people, and I feel like our P.O. box set is going to have some belated birthday gifts in there from the messages I received. Somebody was talking about a custom Batman book they made.
Nice.
That's on its way. So, yeah, the ability to make books is almost like, again, I go back to comics fandom, and you think of like those early mimeographed fanzines and things like that. Boy, that technology's come a long way, what people can make now if they just have a little bit of inspiration. Ooh, should we talk our guest? Let everybody know what's going on with that.
Yeah, pinned it to the top of the chat. We're going to be kicking it with Klaus Janson, going through Daredevil 190, Punisher issue 1 and 2, which is a complete story, which I'm so glad he brought up the issue 2 part, because both of those would be an hour apiece, I think, man. My thoughts with choosing these things is like the Daredevil is Klaus Janson drawing on rails with Frank Miller giving like the roughs and like all that kind of stuff. He sent an email to us with all kinds of goodies, behind the scenes goodies, color guides and things. We're gonna need to pepper our videos with that. But then choosing Punisher, it's like, okay, he's not on rails anymore. But then I realized Mike Barron's the writer, and he draws his scripts himself. You
didn't know that.
So yeah, he does roughs too. So like that'll be part of the conversation. Like, you know, how close did you stick to the Mike Barron breakdowns? Did you get them? Is that how he fully prepares the scripts? Like that kind of stuff. But what an inkslinger, dude. What an inkslinger. I just imagine Klaus Janson has fucking tools like in the webs of this hand here as he's like brush inking, put that there, grab something, put that back in a fucking web, grab something, and there's a lot of tools that he uses at once.
Yes. Yeah, it's wild to see that stuff. Revisiting Frank Miller Daredevils, for some reason, like I forget how good those are to read.
We'll do them
He
all.
was doing something else.
Yeah.
You know, like while everybody else was making comic books, he was doing something else with those Daredevils.
I think it's why he needed a Klaus, man, because I was thinking, like, what is Frank doing? And it'll be a question, like, what is Frank doing here? And it's like, he's probably putting a lot more work on this script and the breakdowns of how the story's told than anybody at that level in a monthly comic, so he just doesn't have time to do the finishes.
Yeah, there's a lot of good work there. The Punisher stuff, too. Man, when Klaus is doing everything himself, one of my questions for him is whether he ever considered lettering. Because it's the last piece on that page. And, you know, it varies. It's interesting to compare Mike Barron and Frank Miller script-wise, but we'll get into that with Klaus.
I'm going to need you to call him Klaus as much as possible, man, because I just keep thinking of Dan Klaus.
Klaus.
Because when you say Klaus, I'm thinking Klaus.
Yeah.
It's that thing you say the name in your head, you know, and then that's just what it is. I get it, but I'm going to keep thinking Dan Klaus every time you say Klaus.
All right, man.
Ready?
You all ready?
Let's fucking do this, man.
Hello and welcome to Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Jim Rugg.
I'm Ed Piscor.
Before we begin, want to remind everybody at home that we do have a Cartoonist Kayfabe Patreon now with multiple levels. The top level, King Kayfaber, gives you access to our recording sessions.
They're watching right now.
Actually talking to them in between videos, talking to them about upcoming guests and questions, and just kind of talking comics a little bit of a closer, more intimate conversation. So check out our Patreon. We also have some free posts up there where you can download some drawing tools if you are a fellow maker, and something for everybody there and a level that will suit you. Also, we are working Cartoonist. What you see here is our bibliography. The best way to support Cartoonist Kayfabe is to buy our books. Ed Piskor's Red Room, gearing up for Season 3, will be coming out for pre-orders now, I believe, but will be coming out very shortly. 2 collections are already out and available. X-Men Grand Design, Hip Hop Family Tree, celebrating 10 years anniversary this year, and WYSIWYG, all available. You can find Hulk Grand Design in comic shops in a beautiful fluorescent green oversized edition this month. Street Angel Deadliest Girl Alive and the Plain Janes also available, and Street Angel Princess of Poverty ready for pre-order. So pick up those books, add those to your collection if you haven't done so already. So Ed, I've been on a crime comics kick lately, and we'll probably be seeing more of my reading reflected in some of the videos that we look at, but crime comics, one of those genres that was huge pre-1954 in the Comics Code. You know, may not have been on the level of the horror comics that get so much reprinting coverage, but the crime comics had all that kind of salacious sex and violence, all the stuff that offended everybody that thought comics contributed to juvenile delinquency. You could find it in a lot of the so-called true crime comics of the 40s and 50s. And a lot of the great cartoonists, you know, they did time producing in that genre. So as I've been going down this crime comics rabbit hole, I'm kind of amazed at the amount of great comics that exist there.
Yeah.
And they aren't reprinted as in the abundance that the horror comics are. So here's one of the first collections of crime comics that I got. I got this pretty early on. This is a collection from Eclipse Books. So I think 88 or 89 they put this together. Teenage dope slaves and reform school girls. Hard to resist this whenever you're a teenage boy and you come across this kind of a lurid presentation of comic books. Had to pick this up back in the day. Seen a few copies float through the Kayfabe compound since we started this. And you can kind of see like Eclipse Comics building a book to sell here and building a book to sell in that bookstore trade that they were trying to break into in the 80s.
Yeah, for sure, man. These mid-80s, when VHS was out, it was just the right place, right time for enterprising people to get hold of public domain materials and just do their thing, man. Because there would be, like, when you go down to IDES, there would be the video equivalent from, like, Incredibly Strange Video.
Yes.
And places like that. And basically, it would be this kind of stuff with the same presentation, where it's like Reefer Madness. You know,
yeah,
that,
exactly.
That was one of the books, one of the videos that would be able to be released by like 10 different companies. You never seen the same Reefer Madness twice. When you were like down at IDES checking things out, and same deal here, man. So like that kind of stuff already primed the pump for a comic presentation like this to exist. And dude, if you look at that front cover, I remember like getting hold of markers as a kid.
Yes.
And going through like in the Overstreet guides, which were black and white. Mm-hmm. You could use like a peach marker and go over top of Superman's face, and like, you know, if it's Christopher Reeve, and it's the exact quality. So this is clearly from like black and white photo, and then they just hit that with the airbrush. Or like you would see old pictures of your grandma, grandpap, like that would be colorized like by hand.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, you see the back cover I was lingering on for a minute. It's just hyperbole.
Yeah.
You know, like this stuff is all sensation, and it is like Reefer Madness, where even if it's under the guise of, you know, good intentions, they're still sensationalizing this stuff to try to sell it. And there's a couple of these stories like Trapped and Lucky Fights Through It. Those are, we've looked at this before by Harvey Kurtzman.
Yeah.
These are both like produced for the public good. I think Trapped might have been from Columbia University, maybe. It was some school that had created it, but it was that kind of like, let's really let kids know that drugs are bad. You know, so it's a warning, but it's wrapped in the what you expect from Sensational Comics, because you're hiring the same creators to do these kind of public service books.
And Lucky Fights It Through is a STD scenario for the GIs, man.
That's
like
right.
I got to let these guys know when you go on other shores.
And Dean Mullaney, the publisher of Eclipse, kind of goes through and spells out, what these stories are, what they're from. There's one called Gun Happy that's basically a cheap knockoff of the noir movie Gun Crazy. There's a couple of Jack Kirby, Joe Simon collaborations when they were doing headline comics. So some interesting stuff in here. There's also a couple of comics that are no credits. The artist is unknown as a result. So the first story, the title story, Reform Schoolgirls, shows up, and I think this is an unknown artist, but this is based loosely on one of the trash paperbacks. So all of those things are kind of the same. They're coming out of the same place. It's exploitation is what any of this stuff is. And I don't know about you, but I have a soft spot for all this stuff. Like, sure. I will get, exploitation crime novel collections, that are like the cover art, and maybe they talk a little bit about the background of those things. And it's the same. It's coming from the same spot. These are commercial endeavors. Like, these are people that are trying to sell stuff. Yeah, totally. And it's from an era where there's very little to kind of consume on a mass level. The TV really hasn't hit its mark or anything like that. So, like, one of the results of that is that nearly 100% of the population is literate in some form or fashion, and it would be about the cheapness of the shit that you're reading, right? Like, so, like, there would be just weird butch right-wing shit that, like, cats would fuck with, like, I'm listening to pulp audiobooks, man, from like Black Mask and junk, and people like my grandpa would mess with that. So, like, that's where Maltese Falcon comes from, and Raymond Chandler, like those dudes, just these pot boilers. But almost everybody was a reader, but it didn't mean that everybody was reading quality. War exactly. and Peace or something. You can see Leroy lettering, like the knockoff of, I don't want to say knockoff, but I mean, EC was what I always associate with that. But you would see, like, these other companies would use it too, some of them. Yeah, and I bet you if we look at dates, they are knocking off of the EC pedigree, man, because it's hard to compete with that success. It almost even looks like Johnny Craig. You see a lot of shades of other genres too. This is a romance comic, basically, the reform school girl who falls for a hood and ends up in prison, and whenever she gets out, guess what? The hood also has gone through his own version of reform, and they find each other in the factory years later. That's kind of a happy ending there. Yeah, that could be approved by the Comics Code, man. It's nearly a chick tract. Could be. Look at this, man. Lichtenstein should have took that panel. There's a lot of these kind of, even like the floors, like the checker of the floor, like I find kind of this beautiful pattern. But this is the one that's produced by a school as, public service. Like, how do we get kids not to do drugs? Let's make a comic book about it. And how many of those comics exist? Like those public service type comics, government funded comics, propaganda, if you will. Yeah. Love this. Like, just the shot of your diner chairs feels perfect. We even we had one of those. It was like Goofy and Donald going through like a nuclear power plant or something like that. Tell us about clean energy. I find that stuff sometimes whenever I'm looking for like old public domain comics. I just found one, and it was what to do if an atomic bomb goes off. I thought they had to reissue that one, but it's what do you do? Crazy. It's like it's totally aimed at kids, and it is like, here's your blast radius for DC or New York City. So to my mind is like, drive right to the center of it so that you don't walk around looking like Deadpool with his mask off. Be the first one. Yeah. Let me get right under it rather than just have some sickness. I thought this car stuff was really good, especially the car wreck, and I love the explosion of the, whatever, like the starburst around it. Very graphic, very simple too. But, these guys they've moved on to the needle now at this point. These are hard drug users. Yeah, it's the gateway, right? Fleeing the scene of the crime. Stepping stones. Driving under the influence. Great panel right here. A lot of good cartooning, because, I mean, these are... There were the studios, right, that they were just working and churning out comics. So whoever it's for and whatever the subject or the story, you kind of get the same approach as if this were a standard crime comic or something for a traditional publisher. Such a bitch to compose when you're on the other side of the bars. In that first volume of Fist of the North Star, when Kenshiro gets put in there, the artist
Tetsuo, he wouldn't really worry about like lining the face up in between the bars. He would just like let the bar kind of dissolve out so that you can see it. And you would say a lot of mangaka will do that with like eyeglasses. Like they will stop the eyeglass like where the eyes are, just kind of have it to the sides. It's very odd in terms of the American idiom, but it solves a problem when you have characters with eyes half the size of their head and things.
Almost a clip art for
lots
your
of
gun.
This is might as well be Crap Hound the comic.
Nice pull. Yeah, it's interesting to see that stuff. Like when you talk about Liechtenstein, that's what I think of. It almost looks like the clip art.
Yeah.
And when you find these old comics in the 40s and 50s, like you'll get a lot of the panels that look that way because one, they're simplified for speed, but also like they're referencing things, and it's just the Liechtenstein comes out of that.
Yeah.
So Kirby and Simon here doing the Bobby Sox Bandit Queen. 16 years old, this girl goes on a crime spree. And these were, so many of these are based on true stories. Like if you look at Crime Does Not Pay, which is kind of maybe like the big one, the one that everybody did copy off of, the one that started a lot of the crime genre success, they all purport to be true stories or based on true stories. It's the true crime stuff that we see now as like podcast sensationalism.
Sure. That Crime Does Not Pay, is that the one that has the little ghost guy with the top hat and floating around? That is like the one kind of comic trope that Alan Moore I don't think has ever fucked with. And if I'm wrong, like please tell me, because I want to see how he would play with that kind of like that little ghost guy following the bandits around. There it is. Lucky Fights Through. We got a video on this one.
Our Bobby Sox Bandit convicted for 10 years in prison before she turned 17. That's quite a crime spree, worthy of Jack Kirby's attention for a teenage girl. I feel like how many movies have been based on this sort of this premise?
I was just thinking of Female Trouble, the John Waters flick. Because it's almost the same aesthetic, and she went on her spree. What set her off was she didn't get cha-cha heels for Christmas.
Yeah, I'm not sure what set off the Bobby Sox Bandit.
Probably something similar. I like that she still does her hair in prison.
That's true. Yeah, got to maintain the look. And Crime Never Pays instead of Crime Does Not Pay.
Sure. Well, you don't want to be plagiarists.
Right. You don't want to plug your competition. Lucky Fights Through It. So this is Harvey Kurtzman's first work for EC Comics. And this was done as a benefit, but through the offices of EC Comics. And, we look at this on another video, so you can check that one out in depth. But kind of cool to see about as straight as you see Harvey Kurtzman, because he becomes more of himself. Stylistically, I think, with some of the other EC stuff and post-EC work that we look at with him, but pretty straightforward here where it's almost, you can imagine him, just trying to get comics work.
Yeah, and you gotta play it straight when you get started out. He becomes an editor, so he becomes the de facto boss, packager of the book. He could start to loosen up and do his own thing. But even when he did do that stuff, like his rubbery figures and all that, I don't think that was dashed out. I think he was very laborious, and that's like the final line that he chose for a very specific reason.
Yeah, it's neat to see his work in this stage where it's not, like the surface I don't think is the most attractive part of this work.
Sure.
But if you look at this, like you can see all the composition and the storytelling is here. Like it's really sound.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah, I forgot this.
The ignorant cowboy.
The song that you sing when your dick is dripping with gonorrhea juice.
Yeah. What a wild document. And I can almost imagine if you're Dean Mulaney putting something like this together, you probably build it around a couple of these. Like we've got some Jack Kirby crime comics. We've got this Kurtzman piece.
This is huge because in stuff like the Overstreet Guide, there would be mention of Lucky Fights It Through, the STD comic, and because like those 80s Overstreet Guides, like AIDS is out there, so like STDs are big in the news when we were growing up and shit. And listen, a 1950s STD comic, like how do you dance around that? And you do it with a lot of like, well, she's a strumpet and like shit like this chick, she came from out of town, like she hangs out with too many fellas,
too many cowboys. Combine it with some Western drama, sell this book. Gun Happy, as I mentioned in the beginning, artist is listed as unknown. I don't know if that's possible to find the actual artist now with a few more resources online looking. But this is the one that's the knockoff, as Mulaney says, of Gun Crazy, one of the early film noirs.
Man, there's some familiar marks here.
There are, yeah. You kind of, I'll see panels and think this artist or that artist, but again, maybe a studio job.
Yeah. Like I truly think that like Jack came and touched a piece or two of this.
Man, I love the old cars too that they would draw. Like all of these old car panels to me, I feel like are just, it's a period piece now. Like back in the day, it was just they were making a contemporary comic, but now you look at this stuff. This is 75 years old comic.
Sure.
It also,
Back to Kirby.
I got this when I was pretty young, and I would be so frustrated with this kind of Kirby. This was so far removed from what I thought of as Kirby, and I would look at it and just think like, he just wasn't very good in the beginning. And boy, do I feel like an idiot now saying that.
Yeah, I love the tandem of Simon Kirby because
Me too.
it's very weird inks. It's Joe Simon like feathering hatch lines, which it doesn't exactly work, but there's something about it, man, that just really speaks to me. I got those Boy Commandos in one of those legendary boxes my dad got at the flea market. That really put me on the path to dig up that shit.
Yeah, it's incredible if you're a fan of somebody like a Jack Kirby that you can have these decades worth of work from different eras and different styles. Like all the stuff with Joe Simon has such a distinct flavor.
Man,
and there's a lot of it.
They getting paid by the word on these fucking
How about
pages here?
that, man? Seriously.
Jesus.
Yeah, and think of your
Let Jack draw.
This in probably 5, 6, 8 of these stories in an issue.
You get your money's worth. And a big part of these comics' existence and their popularity are the 18-year-old army guys who are reading comics, and they come home and they start to set up families and shit, and it would be silly to still be reading Batman and all that. So like let's get something with some stakes, man, something that is handling contemporary issues.
And then one of the stranger pieces that's included in here is Rex Morgan. The Teenage Dope Slaves of the cover title is a Rex Morgan strip that was reformatted to kind of like fit a comic book format and packaged that way, but based on the Rex Morgan newspaper comic strip. And so most of the criticisms I've seen of this book lay it on pretty thick against the Rex Morgan story as being very stiff. But this is a survey of kind of like what the drug culture was like in the early 50s. And some of the comics that I'm working on right now are involved in that same topic. And so you do see this, like when comics are contributing to juvenile delinquency, drugs are another one of those scourges. Like that's relatively early days of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, which would become the DEA. And it's kind of the same, everybody's trying to figure this stuff out. And it's funny to think like drugs and comic books as being the two big factors that are influencing teenage delinquency. Right. How dumb are we in hindsight?
Yeah.
Did anyone, we had Senate hearings. Like in my mind, I'm like, did anybody take that seriously? But we devoted a lot of taxpayer money to the idea of like comic books being, between them and drugs, what hope do kids have? You got to be kidding me.
Whatever the next big thing is, man, is always the deal. And I remember even at the time it was a joke when Bill O'Reilly was railing against Barack Obama for having this rapper named Common, who is a Chicago rapper, come to the White House. And he's like breaking down like all the stuff that Common did over the years and like was affiliated with, I don't know,
Bill O'Reilly?
Bill O'Reilly, the Free Mumia shit. And it's like, dude, this is Common. This is the squarest rapper in all of it. Like, you gotta dig deeper if you're gonna try to, like, it would be like saying Mr. Rogers came to visit me in terms of in hip hop speak, because like Common's the most inoffensive dude ever. So like these guys, like they try to, it's fear mongering. Dad's out at work all the time. Once you start hitting puberty, it's not too hard to bully mom and just do whatever the hell you want. So there's got to be a reason for it, and it's probably drugs and comic books that's causing you to go crazy. I love the hyperbolic shot. Look at the pills. See, even me, I'm square at this day, like right now, where it's like I would just have to. It would just be pills in the comic. Like I wouldn't know what they are or like how they work. It would just be like, yeah, pills are the drug.
I find this interesting in terms of how do you reformat a daily strip to give it some interest in a comic book page. It reminds me of the idea of like, I'm going to put my comic on Instagram, but then it also, I'm going to print it as a page.
Yeah.
And
there's work being done there. Like go back real quick, because like the lettering is the same as the lettering here. So
yeah, things
are being cut. There's art that's not here. They might have just taken that hand out of a panel and fucking blew it up, because this lettering should be much bigger. Yeah, maybe this hand would be way smaller. I don't know.
And by the way, like a lot of this stuff, I think actually looks really good as isolated panels.
Yeah, it's not the full fucking crap hound that Rex Morgan turned into, you know, but it's definitely extremely derivative of Kniff and
Yes.
you know the popular stuff of the day. Listen, man, I would read that comic.
Look at how big those lines look in this like blown up panel and stuff.
Might be-
it's such a brush line.
It might be bigger than the actual artwork
Yeah.
of the original panel.
I thought for a second that was your blown up pills panel, but
Right.
a little bit of a different pose. But you see kind of like, again, the challenge for this strip, I think, is like, how do you turn this strip into comic book pages?
Yeah.
Which is, there are examples of that. There are Donald Duck and Mickey Mouse comics like that, where they reformat
Yeah.
for like the big book collections.
Yeah, that's
and I
true.
used to have those and get so angry at them because you're completely destroying like what the aesthetic of, you know, like page design is such a big part of Carl Barks, for example. And
Totally.
to cut those panels up and rearrange them into like album-sized pages, man, you're
That's a
doing
travesty.
some weird stuff.
Yeah, that's a travesty. I thought you were saying that like maybe they were taking Floyd Godfredson dailies and doing something, which is like, yeah, sure. But listen, man, I got rid of like my Blackthorn Dick Tracy's when the IDW shits, spearheaded by Dean Mulaney, by the way, publisher of Eclipse Comics. When those started coming out, like, you know, I didn't need those Blackthorns that were so tiny and formatted like eight panels a page. Like,
You know, the great ones though are those Gladstones. The like the color Dick Tracy comic books. I think there's 5 or 6 of those. I think you may have given me a couple of those.
Yeah.
I know I have a couple, but not a full run. But I've pulled those out
Future
and I've been
Eps.
reading those.
Future
yeah,
Eps,
definitely.
baby.
Those are sweet. But one of the, like I said, one of the early exposures for me to those 40s and 50s crime comics, because I got this thing sometime in the 90s, and I don't know, man. I've been enjoying going down that rabbit hole, but it also speaks to how like different time periods of comics and when you get into them,
Yeah.
how you react.
It's true.
Because this did nothing for me in the 90s. I was probably disappointed overall in it.
You're right.
And now I go back and revisit it, and it's like, this is the stuff I'm looking at right now.
Got to have that context, you know, and you just got like a more sort of mature point of view. You know the situation these guys were in while they were working. Like you probably like, you know, fanboy mode back in the day, but also you have a lot of comics making under your belt, so you could diagnose the inadequacies of these strips to make sure that whatever you're working on, whatever you're doing, whatever this is inspiring, like you ain't gonna make maybe the same boring mistakes or whatever you notice in here that might take you out of the moment.
It's probably me going from like Sin City at the time
Yeah.
to this, right?
Sure.
'Cause it's like, oh, more crime comics. I love crime comics. And then you're like, what the heck is this?
You know where that never happened though, like with the Sin City stuff, is like you hear Johnny Craig in the interviews, and then you go to the crime suspense stories, and it's like, oh yeah, more of this, man. Like those are flawless.
Yeah, definitely.
Good to go.
I am.
Kayfabers, like, follow, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the bell. We'll notify you when new vids are available. We have a Patreon that, depending on your level of support, you're watching us stream this video right now, and you already picked up a copy of Teenage Dope Slaves before Gen Pop gets the vid. But Jimmy, tell the people what else we have out there.
Hulk Grand Design coming out in February to comic shops everywhere. Reserve your copy today if you haven't already, because they are going fast in pre-orders. Thank you very much for that. Street Angel, Deadliest Girl Alive, Plain Jane's also available, and Street Angel, Princess of Poverty available for pre-order now. You can join me on my Patreon at patreon.com/JimRugg, where you can see lots more of my art. You can download out-of-print zines and mini comics, and you can see what I'm working on next.
Red Room Crypto Killers issue 1 is being solicited for a May release. Going to be 4 monthly issues, each issue completely self-contained, and there are two trade paperbacks out there in the wild right now, also containing 4 self-contained stories. So scoop them up, give them a shot. If you dig them, grab another. 10-year anniversary of Hip Hop Family Tree, scoop up those comics. X-Men Grand Design, 3 volumes of that is out in the wild, and the occasional WYSIWYG you're going to see out there. I'm serializing the new Red Room stuff on my Patreon. $3 gets you the archive, more than 300 pages worth of comics up there. New strips every Tuesday. Jimmy, tell the people how they can also support the channel.
Subscribe to the Cartoonist Kayfabe e-newsletter at the links below the video. You can also find Cartoonist Kayfabe t-shirts, merchandise, mugs, stickers, fanny packs, and lots more at our spread shop. That link is also below this video.
Beautiful way to keep the lights on in the Kayfabe studios and keep these vids rocking. Jimmy, given the marching orders, we'll be on our way.
Read more comics.
Marsh Makes Comics, first time catching a live stream, man. Welcome and salutations. Let me just plug in this phone real quick. I actually meant to do that.
Ed, one of those crime comics that I found a bunch of online is Sam Hill.
Yeah.
And it is Harry Lucy doing a detective, like an Archie Comics detective. It's crazy, these guys, like he does the whole series. I don't know, it's about 8 issues, give or take one.
Yeah.
And it's all Harry Lucy. And I don't think there's an official collection of that available.
Yeah, I'd like to see him do some.
I was reading about Dynamite, the Pete Morisi detective, the eye patch guy.
Yes.
He ran in the back of Miss Tree is how I got hold of those. And the intro to the collection talks about Mickey Spillane's comics origins and stuff.
Comic strips.
Yeah.
Mike
Hammer.
Mike Hammer's novel. I think there was a different comic, but not Mike Danger, the techno comic. There was like something else. But bringing up his name, in one of the stuff that we split up yesterday, like last week, I have a Pete Morisi comic from like 1945. I had no idea he was around that early, but it's some crime comic. Maybe it's a it's in that True Detective or whatever the name of that thing, man.
Morisi's he's got 30 solid years at least.
I had no idea it was in the 40s. And it's indecipherable. You couldn't, it looks just like the shit we just looked at.
Yeah.
You know, nothing
Once
special.
he gets stylized, man, like some of the Dynamite stuff is Alex Toth-esque.
So this is going to be called Crown Jewel of Outlaw Comics. You only got to show the cover or nothing, man, because it's like you get people to click the shit. I want to go through this quick, show it off, and describe that this is the Holy Grail, and then we could go through the important bits here, and that'll be that.
Man, swastika right up front.
It's there, man.
Yeah.
It's in the fucking comic. It's actually a story point. Good to go?
Yeah. Hello and welcome to Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Jim Rugg.
I'm Ed Piscor.
Going to look at some classic all-time Outlaw Comics today. Before we do, I want to remind everybody that we have started a Cartoonist Kayfabe Patreon. Levels for everybody, including the King Kayfaber level. If you're a King Kayfaber, you get to watch us record these sessions live. You get to interact with us, add to the conversation, prep us for interviews, all that good stuff. So check that out. There's a level that I'm sure will suit you perfectly. And have no fear. If you're not part of the Patreon, you will still receive Cartoonist Kayfabe videos every day, brand new videos here on YouTube. The other way to support the channel, we are working Cartoonist. Pick up our books, add them to your collection. Ed's books, Red Room, 2 volumes available now, 3rd volume coming very soon. Pre-order that one. X-Men Grand Design, Hip Hop Family Tree, and WYSIWYG also available from Ed Piscor. You can pre-order Hulk Grand Design from me, Street Angel Deadliest Girl Alive, Street Angel Princess of Poverty, and Plain Jane's are the rest of my books that are out right now. So pick those up and add them to your collection if you haven't done so already, and we will be grateful. So today, Ed, we are going to look at 2 amazing Outlaw comics. A very quick, we have gone through Caliber Presents #1 in the past, but just a quick rehash.
This is the Holy Grail.
Indeed.
This is the Holy Grail, and you get there by having sort of primo works from the Outlaw Comics masters. Got a Tim Vigil. Maybe it's just Tim Vigil. Maybe Tim Tyler did the inking on this one also, because he inks the interior Coda or whatever. Look at how raw they are, man. They got black type over top of black inking.
That mature audience isn't very effective.
It looks like a mistake. But then when you crack the credits, you got the first appearance of Crow by James Obar. You got...
This is where we usually get some comments about, look how they're handling that book.
Yeah. I got this. Hey, shouts to Duncan, man. Got this for a quarter.
Oh, sweet.
In the bins at Duncan. But you got Tim Vigil, Tim Tyler, 2 Dark Princes of Outlaw Comics. Barbed Wire Halo Studios, this I.O. comic. That is James Obar, Vince Locke, and Guy Davis collaborating on a strip. If you don't got the funds to go find you a Caliber Presents 1, you could get those James Obar comics from, I think, North Star. Original Sins, maybe, is where you could find that, and it's not too expensive.
Yeah.
There it is.
Unbelievable. Man. This is like your start of the Crow. Like just random talk about picking up like a random book and probably falling in love. Like, we look at a million of these kinds of books. You come across this stuff, it leaves a mark. It's something that stylistically you haven't seen before.
Yeah.
You don't know that it's going to go on to be what The Crow has gone on to be.
1989.
But you can definitely, when something shows up that is original and different, it will pop. Look at the giant eyeballs and stuff, man.
Yeah,
I'm such a fan of that kind of panel.
He through DMs and shit, he described that like when Eclipse started putting out mangas, Appleseed and shit, transformative. Like, so he wanted those big expressive eyeballs. This is a sick one, man. You got Vince Locke. It says he's inking over top of Bloodworth, but when Vince Locke is inking, it's like when Sienkiewicz inks.
Yeah.
Kind of becomes his thing, man. Like the stuff he did, he turned Guy Davis to an outlaw artist. But this is a story of like a pimp basically testing a chick. Like he sends a John up to her loft, and the John, his whole job is to try to get her off the track, and she stays on the track, and so the pimp's like, all right, I got a good hooker. Pretty dark. This is like, the outlier in as much as like we breezed through that one. I was doing a quick Google on the creator because he has a piece in issue 2, and he has 10 comics under his belt, like in and out of the game real quick. Mark Bloodworth, I consider an Outlaw Comics artist, man. Night Streets.
That's a cool splash
From
page.
Arrow Comics was one of the comics that I got real early from my uncle from his flea market purchases. He would just grab comics, and he just completely agnostic. Like, just if I see comics that look kind of cool, I'll grab them, I'll read them.
That's a really good, that's my favorite kind of reader.
Yeah.
And there aren't that many comic readers like that. I feel like you're usually an oddball. Maybe you're a maker, so you're interested in seeing some technique on the page, in black and whites and different styles. But for a reader, I commend a reader that has that kind of adventurous reading. Yeah.
So this is the Barbed Wire Halo Studio stuff, man. This is James Obar, Guy Davis. You could see Guy Davis in there somewhere. One guy does the tones. One guy does lettering and inking. It looks like James Obar's putting down the initial stuff because that's like James Obar faces.
Yeah, even the some of the heavy brush ink makes me think James Obar.
Yeah.
Man, it's wild stuff.
Yeah, I think this character's name is Danzig.
It's a shame that a book like this doesn't go on to get the 200-page full-on. A couple years worth of these guys working together. It
was supposed to like you could just breeze through the rest because we do have a video about this, man. I just wanted to give a quick glance, but in the back there's the plans of like what's coming. Maybe keep going. All right, last page. Dead World is going to be coming out, so this is like the further issues, and we'll be taking a look at issue 2. But somewhere in here they're talking about an IO graphic novel that's like X amount of pages, and that just has never come out.
Yeah.
The Barbed Wire Halo guys just did not put that together.
That's wild because it says it'll be shipping in April or May. I don't know when this is, but I mean, it's not like 2 years from now, or it seems like it must have been on its way, or at least they expected to finish this thing up. So yeah, it's a bummer not to get that because that is quite a collection of creators.
So this is the Holy Grail. But we'll be taking a look at a crown jewel of Outlaw Comics. And the way you get there is if you got 4 Dark Princes of Outlaw Comics in between the same covers, then you have a crown jewel. And it starts off, you got James Obar on the cover. If you just even flip the back.
Yeah.
You got Dead World Vince Locke on the back in this issue. So we got a King Zombie story.
Nice to see a little blown up Vince Locke artwork, too.
Yeah.
And right off the bat, we start with the James Obar story here with Gideon.
Doesn't it feel cyberpunk, this character?
It does. A lot of his work kind of does.
Yeah.
He has that one that we looked at with the Wile E. Coyote car comic. It feels like you could put that one into a cyberpunk category pretty easily. Kyle Garrett is, I guess, credited as the story for this. So I don't know exactly what that means. And then Randy Zimmerman doing lettering. So it's not 100% James Obar on the page. But man, it feels pretty good.
Yeah, for sure. And Zimmerman would letter these other guys. He did some lettering in that first book. The story is you got this character and Gideons, by the way, Gideon's pawn shop shows up again in Crow. Mm-hmm. Like it's in the movie, it's a different deal. So like this Gideons, it's like Monkey Paw kind of story. You go to this pawn shop and you could get your heart's desire, and they will concoct it up for you. This guy with the wild hair. He's a 200-year-old vampire that's stuck in the body of a kid. It's like, what was that Catherine Bigelow flick? near dark, where they never say the V word, but they're clearly vampires. Yes. And one of them is a kid who's like 200 years old, and would like to know what it's like to grow up and maybe hit puberty one day.
Yeah, so Gideon, apparently maybe you can buy more than just pawned items in this shop. He wants to make a deal where he can go back to being mortal and age a few years.
Yeah.
And then come back to being immortal.
Gideon doesn't believe that our vampire guy is anything, man. It's all talk. So the guy talks about, like, I was here, I was there, pulls off his fucking ear and plops it down on the table.
And
with
then, a little bit of, now you can hear it.
and Gideon is thusly convinced that we can do business.
So one of the cost, one of his teeth.
Yeah, a little vampire tooth. And you could imagine, like, if this was like an ongoing series, like that vampire tooth might go into some other potion or something for somebody else. You got to have a bunch of like rat tails and hair from the head of a witch and shit like that.
It's a classic crime character, the guy who sort of gets things, sources things. It's constantly I'm doing a deal here, and then I've got some of this stuff that you need.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a staple.
Yeah.
And we see it, gets the potion, and
yeah, there's some lady in the back who can make some stuff. And so now the guy is mortal. You will be mortal for X amount of time. Go on, enjoy your life. It's working. It works. Leaves the joint, and like a true monkey paw kind of story, gets run over by a truck as soon as he leaves the joint.
Yes.
Very nihilistic.
Yeah, classic EC, let's give a little O. Henry twist at the end.
Right. When people try to do EC stories, like, they always fail because you have to get the certain formula right. And bad things only happen to bad people. Except for, like, the necessary straw man victim. But, like, the person who's the main person that has the O. Henry twist, they're never innocent. They always do something bad.
Do you feel like this one did all right with the EC Comics formula?
In a way, yeah. I mean, obviously, like, there's all that, like, war crimes and shit.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's definitely shown to be a bad guy
that he was involved in. Yeah, it's just like it is missing elements, though. You could breeze through this next strip because it really doesn't fit our rubric of Outlaw Comics, but it still has some compelling imagery.
Cool, man.
It has its compelling moments.
You know what it misses, I think, more than anything? Black ink.
Yeah, black on the page.
Give me some more shadow here. Give me some darkness around these guys.
And just take a look at the two Dark Princes of Outlaw Comics. Tim Vigil, Tim Tyler.
Got to be a young Tim Tyler. Inking here in the 80s. Fresh out of Kubert school.
Or maybe still a student.
Yeah, possibly.
Lots of stuff on the page. And this is one of those strips where, like, down to the lettering, they're trying to be interesting.
This is so ridiculous, these eyeballs that double as boobs.
Right.
And and carry out,
That's I feel like that's a Tim Vigil staple.
Yeah, that does not, I don't think that's an accident in any way.
I think Avatar put out a Cuda trade paperback that has all the...
they definitely put out some Cuda. I don't know if it's new stuff, old stuff, all stuff. I don't know.
Dude, one of the first quote-unquote graphic novels that Caliber puts out is, like, Andy from Mayberry on steroids.
That's funny. I feel like I have Fugitive, which it looks like that's what this is from. Makes me want to dig it back out because that's ridiculous.
Boom.
How about this? The Doom Patrol.
Yeah.
A Dead World tale. And it's written it's everything by Vince Locke.
Yes.
Even writing. So it's kind of cool to see Vince Locke. This is maybe, I don't know, a couple of years into Dead World and into Vince Locke's career. So you're getting a somewhat mature, very confident Vince Locke, and some of these zombie designs, like that four-armed zombie monster is very cool.
You won't forget this, man. He takes stats from that image and just continues to blow them up. And it creates such a tone. Like, this guy, you have no idea how long he is freaking observing his prey.
Some nice grayscale, too, especially like in this woods where he's whiting out stuff to bring in rays of sunshine coming through the leaves.
Very cool.
This manga line like stuff is something I don't associate with Vince Locke.
Yeah.
And, we've looked through like 2 issues of this now. It's the only place that I've seen this kind of effect. And you mentioned, with the Barbed Wire Studios guys, like looking at that early manga.
James Obar for sure.
You're seeing it right here.
Yeah.
Because where else is this coming from?
Totally.
And our King Zombie was one of those breakout characters, a smart zombie. One of the first, maybe the first smart zombie in like zombie pop culture, and terrifying as a result. And these things are almost like his dogs or something.
Yeah. It's it's just uncanny kind of imagery, man. And in King Zombie, like, so he gets a hold of a guy, and the guy is a rat. Like, the guy is totally narking out his fellow man, and is begging, like, listen, please, like, don't kill me. I want to be one of you. Hook me up. So fucking King Zombie snaps the dude's neck and takes a chomp or whatever, and is like, all right, man, enjoy being a zombie, but now good luck, because your head ain't attached to your body anymore.
Yeah.
How does he put it in that last one?
You'll have a hell of a time going about your zombie life with your head flopping about like a wet noodle.
So
you can see a little bit of the expression on that guy's face of like, what have I done?
Yeah.
This is a bad deal. Any deal you're making with King Zombie is going to be a bad deal. But boy, look at the inks for like the foliage behind him, where it is just like dashed out brush lines and stuff for that. Same with the leather on like King Zombie's outfit.
Sure.
Vince Locke, man, really good in black and white. Little Moontrap preview, I guess an adaptation.
It's interesting that they got that deal, you know, like Caliber Press, of reasonably untested talent, you know, untested publisher, but it's not like it's Star Wars, you know, it's some fucking Walter Koenig sci-fi movie.
This is 1989.
Yeah.
How much does this remind you of Dark Horse Aliens, that Nelson version? Because that would have been about the same time period, 88, 89. And you almost see even the aesthetic is similar, where you're getting the gray, you know, the various screens and stuff to kind of add that gray to it.
This whole enterprise, like Caliber Presents, is, you know, want to be Dark Horse Presents, and, you know, you take the talent pool that you have and get them all in one book.
Man, I always love these old Caliber comics whenever you come across like the Baker Street ad.
Detroit Motor City Comics. Like, Outlaw Comics could be called something else, and it could be all Detroit related, because what a talent pool. And this is that earlier kind of Guy Davis, that, like, you can get that Baker Street graphic novel if you can't find all the issues. And once Vince Locke gets his hands on Guy Davis art, it turns into Outlaw Comics.
We should look through the Baker Street series at some point to watch Guy Davis become Guy Davis.
Right.
Because in the beginning, it's something. And by the end, it's Guy Davis.
Yeah, it's almost American manga looking style. And then I really think it's the Vince Locke influence, because he carried some of those ticks over to like Sandman Mystery Theater and shit. Mm-hmm. Unless Vince Locke was inking him there too.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think at that point it's all Guy Davis. But it's just interesting to see him. He's so good.
Yeah, within 200 pages.
By the end of that, he is phenomenal.
Totally.
And you'll see it really show up. Like, there'll be panels that are great early on, and then by the end, it's like every page is just banging. This Dead World graphic novel, probably my first Dead World, and possibly my first, like, something I was getting special from a comic book store. There was, like, a tiny comic book store that opened briefly, and I was able to, like, pre-order stuff a little bit, and I would see things like the Dead World collection and be like, oh, the first 7 issues, because there's zero chance I was getting those.
Right.
You know, I wasn't going to find them anywhere, not at the flea market anywhere, anyway. And so whenever something like that would show up, it was such like manna from heaven or something that it's like, oh man, I get this thing that didn't even think was possible.
Young Jim Calafiore
bumped into him in at Baltimore this year.
Yeah, I don't know this comic, but like there's that Camelot something or other, or maybe it's just called Camelot from Caliber. That's another one of my comics from my uncle that like he just grabbed comics and passed them on. He's very rough. He's rougher than this. I would imagine, like, looking at that piece of art, it's way more sound than the Camelot stuff. So I have to imagine that Camelot thing is earlier than this.
So ambitious whenever you're starting out to do, you know, like an 88-page square-bound graphic novel, to do a miniseries, to do a whole issue is just like, you know, you might be able to draw like one nice picture, but to put that together for 20 or 30 pages.
It was considered a joke. Like in all of the how-tos and like writers doing like their little thesis on like how to get into comics, like it would always be a joke. Oh, don't think that you're going to be doing like a 500-page graphic novel to start. Like, you got to start small and maybe in anthologies. And now it's just like, nah, dude, you better disappear for 5 years and make your 500-pager if you want to make some noise.
Yeah, I always feel bad for like a young cartoonist if that's what you're saddled with now.
Yeah.
Because, like, how much do you change in your first 2 years? You know, to try to be consistent like that just seems impossible. Hey, it says Caliber coming in Caliber Presents. I assume issue 3. They have another IO listed. And I don't know if that's in there or not, but I would love to see some more IO if it's out there.
Yeah, there's 2 IOs, and like I said, they're all published in that Original Sins comic from North Star, or the one that's called like James Obar Comics. Mm-hmm. There's like 2 solo James Obar comics. Yeah, Pink Dust.
Yeah,
has some stuff. And so I think the other one is in there, and that's all we get. I think he said that like there's a bunch of unfinished pages that he has.
Be curious to even see those.
Totally.
You know, what kind of state they're in and how much they're getting passed around.
So here's the question to the Kayfabers, man. You know the rules. Crown Jewel of Outlaw Comics requires 4 Dark Princes of Outlaw Comics to be within the same covers. Name a couple. Like, is there a Crown Jewel in the North Star Splatter series or any of those kinds of books, man? Is there a Blackthorn comic out there? Is there an Avatar comic?
Is there a great Dark Horse Presents issue?
Sure.
That's loaded up with this kind of talent. Yeah, I don't know. I'd be curious to see those kind of answers. It's interesting, man. All these publishers up to like even the late 90s would have some kind of anthology of this sort.
Yeah. I mean, it's you got to road test your rookies, and if you're lucky, man, you got a breakout. Like Crow hit the ground running really, really fast, man.
We're gonna have to look at some of these kinds of anthologies because I do think there's some good stuff out there, and who knows, maybe some ideas for future projects from us.
Yeah, that's true, man. You good to go, Jimmy?
Yeah.
Kayfabers, like, follow, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the bell. We'll notify you when new vids are available, and gotta let you know that we have a Patreon going on right now. I saw a couple of copies of that Caliber Presents #2 floating around on eBay, and they're probably gone right now, man, because the King Kayfabers who are watching right now, if they want it, they're scooping it up. But Jimmy, tell the people what you have out there, man, to help keep these vids coming.
All right, man. My books, Hulk Grand Design, Street Angel Princess of Poverty, Street Angel Deadliest Girl Alive, and Plain Jane's. Books that you can add to your shelf. Help support the channel, help support my practice. You can also join me on patreon.com/JimRugg, where you can download out-of-print zines and mini comics. You can see a lot more of my art, and you can see what I'm working on next.
Red Room Crypto Killers issue 1 is being solicited in shops right now. That means we got a new 4-issue run of Red Room Comics for 2023, and there are 2 collections of the previous runs. The Antisocial Network trade paperback and Red Room Trigger Warnings are out there in the wild right now. All stories completely self-contained. I'm serializing the new Red Room stuff on my Patreon. $3 gets you the archive there. It's a 10-year anniversary of Hip Hop Family Tree. 3 volumes of X-Men Grand Design are out in the wild, and you'll find the occasional WYSIWYG if you look hard enough. Jimmy, tell the people what else we have going on.
Subscribe to the Cartoonist Kayfabe newsletter at the links below this video. You can also find Cartoonist Kayfabe t-shirts, merchandise, stickers, fanny packs, mugs, and lots more at our spread shop. That link is also below this video.
Great way to keep the channel rocking, man. Give them those marching orders, Jim. We'll be on our way.
Read more comics. You know what, man? It's real true for us to look at some of these things and see how anthologies, how they are putting those together.
It is true.
I think this is my copy.
Yeah, I see mine sitting on top of my stuff.
Do you have the House of Mystery reprint, the first appearance?
Oh, sure. You want it?
I don't have it.
Like, I don't have... I do have the issue for sure. Like the reprint of that. But it's in Alan Moore shit. It's in, like, the... remember there's that Bog story or something? Like, it's basically clipped into an issue of Swamp Thing.
Yeah, I may have it somewhere like that.
Yeah.
I don't remember that story.
It's pretty unrefined.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a gothic story. It's not Alec Holland or whatever. It's just completely different kind of...
It's interesting that exists. You know, like it might be something for a future video.
That's true.
As a follow-up, because it's like, how many examples can you think of where it's like, oh yeah, they did this character and then they basically fixed it, refined it.
Alan Moore, being the genius that he is, wove that into the tapestry. That, you know, there's like this parliament of there's been many Swamp Things, and you know that original guy like gets brought in. Matt Cable's in this. You know, he's a big part of the Alan Moore run. Pretty remarkable. This might be a 2-page, like a might be the way to
Yeah,
sort
I will show it. There's another reprint of these things too, in like a DC Presents or something. They're spread out where it's like issue 9 and 17 and something, and it reprints like the original run, but scattered. And I have one of those. So like whenever I pulled this out, I pulled out that issue, and it's newsprint and stuff.
Dig.
Yeah, and you know, it would have been nice, but I just didn't have the first one of that. But it's cheap on my comic shop, which should be the tip for everybody watching at home. It's so funny how these things, like the reprints, exist in the past.
Yeah, and that'll be part of this conversation, I think. I'm good if you are. I locked it, but I'll relock it. Boom. Good?
Yeah. Hello and welcome to Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Jim Rugg.
I'm Ed Piscor.
Going to look at a kind of a classic DC character today. Before we do, I want to let everybody know that we have a Cartoonist Kayfabe Patreon out there, multiple levels to suit whatever your needs are. And at the top level, the King Kayfabers, they actually get to sit in on our recording sessions. So they are watching now and talking to us in the chat and interacting. So give that one a shot if you haven't already. You can find us at patreon.com/cartoonistkayfabe. We are also working Cartoonist, so one of the best ways to support Cartoonist Kayfabe is to buy our books. Ed Piscor's Red Room, X-Men Grand Design, Hip Hop Family Tree, and WYSIWYG, all available at finer comic shops and bookstores everywhere. Hulk Grand Design, Street Angel Princess of Poverty, Street Angel Deadliest Girl Alive, and the Plain Janes are my latest offerings out in print these days. So add those to your shelf if you haven't already. And get ready to go down DC memory lane with Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson's first appearance, first Swamp Thing issue.
Yeah.
I guess is the way to say that, since we did have a Swamp Thing appearance sometime before this. But the Swamp Thing that we think of kind of begins here. And I have a Roots of Swamp Thing that we're going to look at. This is a reprint from 1986. Reprinted several times. You know, like one of DC's hit characters in so many ways, and really breaking the mold when you think of Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman. Swamp Thing kind of out there.
Totally, man. And you know, with the revitalization that Alan Moore brought to the game, get to see Adrienne Barbeau's topless and rolling around in the swamp. And then if that wasn't enough for you, you could see Heather Locklear being carried away by Swamp Thing. Like those flicks, like we rented those a million times.
Yeah, they were
when
big,
I was growing up, man. And then after wrestling, and certainly during commercial breaks, there was always the commercial for that like real cheap, shitty looking TV show.
Yeah, the USA TV show.
I remember as a kid, like just never understanding, like how come when Toxie's on, a comic convention, he looks so dumb compared to the movie, and how come this Swamp Thing looks like a Ben Cooper costume, but like the movie one looks so good. Like if the movie one was just on his TV show, like I would watch it, and then it's a different guy. Like I never understood any of that, the logistics.
Yeah, that's man, before anything except practical effects, there weren't a lot of comic book movies, so you had to take what you could get. That was a big deal. Made toys, as a result.
That was actually the cartoon, man. Swamp Thing, you make my heart sing. That was like the song, man. I had the toy, dude. You pull his one hand. Mm-hmm. Like there's a bunch of different Swamp Things. There was the one that had like the grappling hook hand. You pull that shit, and then you click the legs together, and it sucks the hand back to the arm.
Well, you can see where it all starts, and it's interesting to look at the beginning of Swamp Thing and how much this is a Bernie Wrightson vehicle.
Absolutely.
These Roots of Swamp Thing, DC was experimenting, Marvel was doing these kinds of like better paper and recollecting stories from the past.
Classic stuff.
It's so funny to think of like how we got reprints back then.
Yeah.
Because you weren't getting the book, the deluxe book collection. You were getting these things, more comics, but comics that were reprinting old comics.
Yeah, totally. And it's like they have this catalog. They own it. They let you know they own this stuff. So how can we reintroduce this material to like a new generation? The earliest DC trade paperbacks were like the Alan Moore Swamp Thing, I think, was like one of them. Like Warner Books is Dark Knight Returns. Mm-hmm. Like it gets a different label because probably bookstore distribution, stuff like that. But like for DC Comics, it might have actually still been Warner. I got to look in the other room. It was like Alan Moore Swamp Things. We're getting that trade. it was not often you would see those kinds of collections, and they would always fuss with them. Like, they would take the credit box out in those trades, so there would just be like a yellow rectangle with nothing in it on the fucking page, and all the little page numbers would be taken out.
And it would always, like the Swamp Things, it was the Toddle Bin, it'd be like a really sexy painted cover.
Yeah.
You know, it seemed like it was those early days of like, how do we sell this?
Totally.
You know, to a bookstore, to a different audience.
And DC did a bunch of this. They did Dead Man. They did Marshall Rogers.
You mean this format?
This format.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they did the Marshall Rogers Batman, the Neil Adams Dead Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, those things were sweet.
Forever People. Or I guess New Gods.
New Gods. Yeah, that New Gods collection. I feel like that was really good New Gods up until they did like the newsprint hardcovers, which 20-year gap maybe between those two editions.
Right.
But I can remember getting those New Gods and being like out of my mind with having access to them finally.
Check out the first caption on page 1. Like flip to the front and like just read that for me, Jimmy.
The darkness cries, a long mournful well that rise through the gnarled cypress branches like a breath of Hades' wind, skipping over the placid surface of the stagnant mire below.
I swear, whenever Alan Moore starts doing Swamp Thing, he is making fun of this stuff. When he's talking about the red sky, like blotted daubs of slit wrists or something like that. Like, he's making fun of Len Wein, man.
Yeah, it's.
But there's a tradition to that because that's Lovecraft. You know, Lovecraft, and just like the Arkham House horror novels and shit would just pile on. Like, you just know the author's sitting there with a thesaurus right next to him.
Yeah, it's a funny piece because, like, I was reading this, first time I've read this in quite a while.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about, like, just the purple prose nature of these captions. And, you know, it's Stan Lee-esque in some ways, but Stan Lee's describing something else, and it made me think, is this a result of Bernie Wrightson sort of having this like almost moody art that's coming along, right? This is not action that we're seeing that you might comment on. It's much more of like mood setting. So if you're the writer, you got to get in there and add some of that purple prose to enhance that mood. What I'm saying is, should we blame Bernie Wrightson for kind of setting the stage for this kind of melodramatic prose?
What I will say is that the writing tandem is as incongruent as like Neil Adams connected with like Roy Thomas or Denny O'Neil. It's like you got this is the next generation of artists, the next level of mainstream comic book art, but the writing is not caught up to what these guys are kind of putting down on the page.
Is this I think it's 1972 would have been the original material here. So kind of a weird nether period for comics too. You know, you always hear like Neil Adams talk about how like nobody got into comics within 5 years of him. You know, it was like this down period. And I feel like that's that time period, that early 70s time period whenever things were kind of weird for comics. So Bernie Wrightson, you know, next generation guy, but also almost a guy on an island. Not a lot of artists of his style and caliber.
These guys were not cracking Marvel DC, but he got his bones at Creepy, Eerie, the Jim Warren stuff, and he was a breakout star.
Yeah.
In that realm. Marvel starts doing magazines, like these other publishers, they start doing magazines because of the influence of the Jim Warren books, and it was probably a boon to get Bernie Wrightson, this young upstart, into your game. Somebody told us, it might have been Simonson on a shoot interview, who said that like the old timers, like he was there when Bernie Wrightson and them were there when he got his first job. But like the old timers, you know, Sid Broom and like those kind of guys, were telling Kaluta and Wrightson, like, you guys are making us look bad. We got expensive mortgages and we got families to feed and we got to get these monthly comics out, and you guys are fucking young and you guys are eating top ramen and taking a week to draw a page, and you're fucking making us look bad. It's almost like those union employees of like, hey kid, stop working so hard, you're making us look bad.
I was gonna say wrestlers, because you would hear about wrestlers coming through the curtain and like the old timers, the main eventers being like, you don't do that match again, kid. I can't follow that.
Right, man.
Joe Orlando is your editor.
Yeah.
And I make note of that because like you look at Wrightson and he's a guy that shows up that, you know what, this is not DC house style. This is a unique style. And I bet you not every editor there could figure that out.
Sure, but Joe Orlando, EC talent,
Exactly.
man. And, like, you look at this, there's a little Frazetta. There's certainly a lot of Ghastly Graham Ingalls.
But it's a space that Orlando's creating.
Yeah,
You know what I
totally.
mean? That's
Yeah,
not
he's
every
got-
editor is not going to bring what Joe Orlando brings to the table.
That was like a fascinating time period because like he's an editor. Joe Kubert's an editor. He's handling the war book, so they would have these different wings. But like check that out also, man. Tatiana Wood as colorist. So Bernie Wrightson is stoked. Like he's got like his EC. He's got the 6 degrees of separation between him and Graham Ingalls is much closer.
And Tatiana Wood is somebody that I remember. I don't know if Bissett said it on our interview talking to him, but he's definitely said it to me in conversation when we talk about like because I think his Swamp Things are some of the best looking monthly books ever made.
Oh, yeah.
the Bissett Toddleben team, and he would cite Wood as being like a contributor to that
Absolutely.
quality. So she's a longtime colorist and associated with Swamp Thing for quite a while.
She colors the Alan Moore stuff, and like one of the great collaborations. There are very, very, very few great collaborations in mainstream comics history, and when you say great, it has to be all people in symbiosis, man.
Right.
And that Alan Moore, Toddleben, Bissett, Tatiana Wood, John Costanza lettering.
That's true too.
That is a great collaboration where everybody is fighting the good fight, not trying to sort of outshine the next person, and they're just making an excellent comic on a monthly basis. It doesn't happen often, and she was an important piece of that, man, because like I feel like the Dave Stewarts and shit would take note from her because there's so much cool colors being used, and like red shows up in the exact right moments, and you see it right here.
Yeah, you really do. Like eyeball Dakar, it leads you right through your page.
Yeah.
The main story here, we're starting like in the present with Swamp Thing looking at this barn-like structure, and now we're going to do our flashback. How did we get here?
Yes. Yeah, which it would, dude, show off the fucking cool guy.
Yeah, you do gotta lead
It's
with
a build. There's a build to it. So show off the cool shit, and god damn it.
Yeah, and our origin story here is Holland and his wife are scientists and working on something that's so important we're gonna hide them so that enemies of the state can't find them or whatever, and it's in the middle of this swamp is where they choose to hide them. Pretty low security, by the way.
This is Monsanto. This is the origin of Monsanto. Hey, are we still on? Do we still have a YouTube channel?
yeah. Suddenly our signal's been interrupted.
Hey man, I hear a knock.
Gotta get your work to your strengths of your artist. Let's get some of that lab equipment in there. We know what Bernie Wrightson can do, man, and that evil scientist lab.
Yes,
gotta have that
because he was doing that stuff, man. Like there's that one Muck Monster joint where it's like the ooze is like seeping from the mountaintops and goes to the sewers and gets reanimated. Like all the test tubes and shit were in that way before his Frankenstein. They call out Frankenstein here. You also see the under table piece, man, which is that's foreshadowing.
Yeah, it won't be the last time that we see that weird low angle, and we see exactly what he's making. This kind of, I don't know, man, super growth formula.
They're going to be able to grow. They're going to be able to grow gardens in the desert.
That's right.
And that'll just solve everything.
And about the time we get to see the demonstration of this amazing drug concoction that he's whipping up, get a knock at the door from some unsavory fellows stepping out of the shadows. They want to make their own deal. and it's so sinister. This is a time period of there are good guys and bad guys.
Yes.
And these dudes are bad guys. Just so swarmy looking and double lit with the green shadow on his face. Yeah, no question as to how these guys line up.
So fascinating, man, because Bernie Wrightson doing a monthly book, and he couldn't sustain it. But this is still early in his run. He's figuring stuff out. You were talking like you're starting a new strip, and the kind of you got to get your sea legs. Bernie's getting his sea legs here. This is incredible stuff, very well lit. You can tell he's figuring, posing stuff and getting that double lighting. But this is still pretty rudimentary Bernie Wrightson right here. He just continues to grow and grow.
Yeah, they managed to chase off the bad guys once, and whenever they get another noise at the door, this time it's a dog.
Yeah.
And
real cartoonish little pup.
It really is. Almost a mustache.
Looks
on
like
his face.
it looks like British, like Dum Dum Dugan got hit with a ray.
So the Hollands can't resist this charming dog, and we cut to they have a radio transmitter in his head.
It's so Golden Age, like the spies and saboteurs of the Golden Age. the dog is a very important story piece for what Len Wein is proposing here for the story, which, fuck it, it's a million years old comic. The wife is going to die. So, like, you need Swamp Thing to have somebody to talk to.
Yeah.
Some stakes.
Look at how gnarled up, like, the hands and all the folds in the clothing.
Oh, yeah. It all suggests the planes and stuff. The lighting. He's very adventurous with the angles also.
Yeah, that's true.
To
me, it's all the formula for the horror.
Sure.
The angles and all those gnarled up limbs and the shadows everywhere.
This is a very instructive piece of storytelling right here with the bomb thing, right? Because it lacks continuity, and that is fully a function of readability for us, the viewer. If you're just reading this like willy-nilly, like a fan, you never notice it, but you see that the dynamite gets switched around here. Why? Because we need you to know that this is dynamite. Like,
right.
From this angle, if you're just seeing the blue thing and it's obscuring the dynamite sticks, that doesn't work. It's more work for the reader. So I think that this is actually a very, very smart decision, even though it abuses continuity.
Makes me wonder if that's an editorial change. If that's something an editor would have caught and been like, you know what, we need the dynamite out.
And if it's not that, it's just the storytelling instincts of a young Bernie Wrightson.
I'm glad you point that out. It totally slipped my attention going through it the first time, and it's a good detail.
I felt this when I was a kid reading that. Like, that is so ghastly. And Swamp Thing is a character because of the reinterpretation of Alan Moore and the movie and a TV show. And I think there was even, like, since we were doing Kayfabe, I think there was, like, a new TV show that, like, had an episode or two and it went away. But the origin has been adapted, nearly as much as, like, a Superman or something. So, like, we've seen this in real time. Even as a little kid, I saw this I didn't know he was a comic character first. I thought it was just movies, like Toxic Avenger. But I just feel that moment. And the way he does that face.
This feels so much like a Golden Age piece to me. That first panel,
sure.
With just everything's just murky lines.
Yeah,
it feels very, very much in that mold, and it's a very easy origin to follow. Of course, he's exposed to his chemicals.
Sure.
We've seen what one drop does, and now he's been exposed to all of them. So yeah, it's kind of a pretty easy to follow setup, and happens quick, right? Like, he's getting buried in the ground, and she's going back to work a couple days later.
Right.
And we are going to see him emerge from the swamp, which really, like, this is your money stuff. This is the stuff I remember from reading this, pretty young in my life. And what left a mark for me, it's seeing a monster rise up out of that swamp.
Muck Monster is a grand tradition in comic book lore. Man-Thing actually comes before Swamp Thing. And before that, there was the Heap from Airboy Comics in, like, the Golden Age. I think there was a Tomorrow's book or a John B. Cook book that is just about bog monsters.
I think Beset authors, if not that book, a book on that subject.
Yeah, there was like Basil Wolverton stories. Like, the bog monster, the Heap, is a grand tradition in comics, and Wrightson is just carrying on that tradition. When you look at this money shot, knowing what Beset and Toddlebin do, this looks so prototypical to me. Bernie Wrightson must have been over the moon whenever he saw those young lads doing what they were doing with his character, because while cool, this is iconic. This is the Swamp Thing from the animation and shit, but Beset and Toddlebin take it to another level.
Yeah, they really do. It's pretty wild to have such masterful artists interpreting a character in such different ways, and having it be so successful both times. Because I look at this and kind of marvel at some of the
double
marks,
lighting and stuff.
But it is a totally different version of the character than what we're going to see those guys do.
And Wrightson is one guy. Beset and Toddlebin, that's two. So Wrightson, while being a master of texture, light, form, and all the necessary pieces to get you that super sexy Swamp Thing, he's doing this comic himself. So there needs to be a little bit of economy.
When I look at this, I wish this highlight, this like double light, was a brighter shade of green. Maybe a little bit less cyan in that to really pop it. Because it's almost the same greens.
You could just do yellow.
Yeah, you really could if you wanted to push it to its max. And I wish that it stood out a little bit more, because I love the way he's lighting the face.
Yeah.
But I think the color doesn't quite accentuate that lighting choice as much as it could. This was one of those images that stuck with me as a kid. I love this as a panel. You get the Swamp Thing logo at the top. Like, this is your door poster. You know, it's a great image. But I would look at, like, this second fist, this lower fist. There's so much power in that fist.
Yeah.
And that can be a throwaway element if you're not careful. But he was so good with hands.
Sure.
Like, almost any of these hands, there's something, they're worth that second look. And it really stands out to me, him making a fist down there and the way the light's hitting those knuckles. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
All right, man. So our dog goes running out, and now Cable goes out after the dog. What's it doing out there?
Yeah,
This is
Matt
the
Cable,
problem.
who is the policeman who's kind of in charge of just hanging out around the perimeter, let them do their thing, but make sure that no bad guys get in. Like you said, there's not 4 ways to get to them. You know, there's 360 degrees worth of...
There's one little road.
Right.
Park a cop on either side of that road about 100 yards out, and you ought to be all right. One great moment here. Swamp Thing's going to go warn them, right? Sees himself in the reflection of that window, that wet window, and realizes he can't show his face.
Right.
He's terrifying. He even makes his own arg sound whenever he sees himself. What a great comics moment.
It is. And this made me actually wonder, is this the first different kind of like dialogue thought balloon created for a character? You know how like
That's a good
Sandman has
question.
his
Yeah,
own,
yeah.
or Spawn
Ghost
has
Rider.
his own, like all that stuff. Is this the first time that is done in comics where a character has their own unique dialogue bubbles and thought balloons?
Yeah, Kayfabers add to that conversation because, boy, is that a credit for a letterer if that's the first time.
Yeah, and it could be something in the notes, you know, like something that they aesthetically wanted to try out.
It's pretty thoughtful, too, on your captions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whoever, the letterer is uncredited in this. So, nice lettering. Whoever is responsible for that, maybe if a Kayfaber knows, throw that one in the comments, because they deserve some credit. And what happens? Cable goes off after that dog, and our thugs are back.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Like, fool me once, you know, shame on me, like that type of shit. Like, they didn't up the security or anything. I guess they were expecting that lightning would not strike twice.
Or the Cable wouldn't run away from the house.
Right.
Like, wasn't he stationed there? Man, didn't take much for the bad guys to get her alone. Swamp Thing off saving the dog, who you talk about, Ed, is being a supporting character as we go forward. Choose the dog over the wife, I guess.
Yeah, it's a very bold move, and it feels wrong to me when you read this first issue that you just like take any of his human alliances away. Like in my mind, you keep her alive, and then it becomes a thread where he has a reason to bring Alec Holland back, or you know, try to, like Ben Grimm thing, like gain his humanity back.
A lot of pathos there if your wife is still alive.
Exactly.
And you can't talk to her.
Exactly. Just like, you know, the Spawn thing, really.
Yeah.
So I do think that they missed a lot of opportunity, and I think they might have even recognized that, because I think we develop Abby Arcane in the next issue.
Here's an example. When I was mentioning like that Swamp Thing double lighting, like I would have liked a little more contrast in the color.
There it is.
You can really see it on Cable, especially like around the top where you're getting that contrast between the light yellow and the gray of the hair.
Yeah.
Again with these great fists. They're so good. Man, I loved all of this stuff again as a kid. You know, anytime the monster, you get a shot of the monster and it looks like the monster.
He has like gorilla arms. You know, it's not like human proportion arms. They're much longer, and they just look more clubby.
Yeah. Yeah, great sequence too. I imagine this would have been a great turn of the page reveal.
Totally.
But guy going through the windshield, awesome. And you mentioned before like some of the angles and stuff being adventurous. That's a great one from under the car as we see Swamp Thing charging at the car.
Yeah, shit, man. Drawing the under part of a car. Like, anytime you need to draw that, you can never find the reference.
No, of course not. How different, too, is Bernie Wrightson's style from, like, your typical superhero dynamic?
Yeah.
You know, like, think of, like, the Marvel House style versus what Bernie Wrightson's bringing here, and how to have, like, you know, like, there's not... I don't feel a sense of motion of that car, for example. So, kind of interesting to see how he does movement.
Sure.
Compared to what we've seen in a lot of guys like the Kirby and the Kirby followers. And picking up the pieces, you know, the gun has no effect, so these bad guys are getting their comeuppance.
Yeah.
Which is pretty good too. Something that you might not have seen a lot of in the 70s. You know, I mean, this is Punisher kind of. We're going to dispense of these bad guys.
It's a complete story, and it's almost like, could this have been one of those DC first issue type comics where you get your one and done, but once you deliver the pages, like Joe Orlando has to go to, I don't know, Carmine Infantino or whoever's the publisher and just like, no, listen, let's make this a thing.
This is so radical to look at and think of through that lens of like, you've got a pile of raw pages and you're being like, hey, we got to do more of this.
Yeah.
Because it does not look like anything. Like, Swamp Thing's always been an institution in our lives.
Yes.
But man, whenever this first story comes in, they've got to look at it as like, what the heck is this? And let's do more.
Yeah, this is brilliant. Like, we got that like hotshot kid. Like, let's put a 12-issue contract or something. And just even the stuff that Alan Moore will kind of pick up later, where there are these like mirrored pages where there's the same kind of sequence with the panel construction on several pages across the spread. Like he's really established stuff. And Bernie Wrightson is a tremendous visual storyteller. I don't know how it worked. I don't know if Len was doing Marvel Method, bringing that to DC, and allowing the artist to do so much. But we used actual pages of Bernie Wrightson Swamp Thing in storytelling classes in Kubert School. One of the teachers, big mark for Wrightson, and there's that one especially like with the pitchforks on the cover with the heap of dudes. It's the one where Swamp Thing's arm gets cut off, and in a 9-panel sequence it comes back.
Yes. And
how like each of those panels is like an exact measure of time. Like that was like one of the examples in one of the classes, like that page.
So wild. I love his the way he builds a body for Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
Is really impressive to me, because at times you get superhero stuff. There's a muscular arm here or there, but he's also like this weird shape. Like you mentioned the arms being too long, and then when you go from like an emotive face, that body to me is more emotive than the face. Mm-hmm. You know, it just looks so just beaten down. Like like it's so sad as he's walking away, man. Like
it doesn't move.
Hopeless.
Yeah, it doesn't move the way like a human body does. That exact composition, I think it comes from Frazetta. I think there's a cover painting that Frazetta did.
Yeah.
Same sort of lighting and things. But yeah, like there's like it's like a tumored trunk with like kind of a hunchback.
Yeah, there's something tragic almost just in his body shape. But man, as he walks away, you get it really well. There's a really good Wolverine story with Silvestri doing it. It's like early in Hama's run, where Wolverine's walking off in the shadow, you know, like in the distance, and it's this kind of like almost like an animal, you know, just hunched over and dragging. And that's it, man. 24 pages in, this is where your first issue ends, and you see our final panel. We're going to set something up. You know, like you want to know, who does that clawed hand belong to? And what are these creatures that are watching Swamp Thing from a distance?
Yeah, it makes you real curious, like how, like what all influence like Wrightson had on the future stories and stuff, because it gets silly. Like there's like that Tyrannosaurus that's in an astronaut outfit or something. like that is a story in here. You know, of course you get your traditional stuff. You get a werewolf. The cool thing about issue 2 is you get your introduction of those like unmen or whatever they're called, the dudes that are totally from that. Actually, you know what? I got this pulled for another comic. If you can go over there, like in that pile, there's that Haunt of Fear cover comic. You see it. Like throw that down here, and like you see all these guys here, right? Like if you just like scroll through a little bit, you'll see that that's the inspiration for. You know, like literally almost one for one. Like he's just redrawn some of these guys, built from hands. And
yeah, like totally your hand guy. Oh man.
Yeah. Big Ghastly Graham fan.
Kind of neat to see too how quickly Wrightson codifies your Swamp Thing. You know, like there are kind of like rough, shadowy stuff in the first one that I feel like, oh, we've got him now. Like you could make your figure with issue 2.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. But listen, man, I don't know that this will be the last Wrightson Swamp Things we'll look at.
No, and there are some other Swamp Thing reprints that are pretty good too. So yeah, I could see us getting going back into this well, but also looking at how you get these reprints over the years, over a couple of decades.
Yeah, it's fun. Good to go, Jimmy?
Yes.
Kayfabers, like, follow, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the bell. We'll notify you when new vids are available. And shouts to the people who are supporting us on Patreon, who are watching us stream this video live. They're completely mitigating the kayfabe effect because they're getting all these videos before you get them. Jimmy, tell the people what books you have out there.
Hulk Grand Design, Street Angel Princess of Poverty, Street Angel Deadliest Girl Alive, and the Plain Janes. Order them today if you haven't already. Some of them are shipping soon if they aren't in your comic shop already, and it's always a good idea to reserve those ahead of time because, man, when books go out of print these days, sometimes it can be a while before they come back. You can also join me on patreon.com/JimRugg, where you can see a lot more of my art. You can download out-of-print zines and mini-comics, and you can see my new comic as I am working and developing it.
Red Room Crypto Killers, issue 1 is being solicited. Going to be in comic shops in May. Another 4-issue round of Red Room Comics in 2023. I'm serializing all of them on Patreon before they hit paper. $3 get you the archive there. There are 2 existing trade paperbacks for Red Room. Red Room, The Antisocial Network. Red Room, Trigger Warnings. It's a 10-year anniversary of Hip Hop Family Tree. Scoop those comics up if you see them. 3 volumes of X-Men Grand Design are out in the wild, and you may find an occasional WYSIWYG if you look hard enough. Jimmy, what else do we have out there, dude?
Subscribe to the Cartoonist Kayfabe newsletter at the links below this video. You can also find Cartoonist Kayfabe t-shirts, mugs, hats, stickers, and lots more merchandise at our spread shop. That link is also below this video.
Beautiful way to support the channel. Given those marching orders, Jimmy, we'll be on our way.
Read more comics.
Boom. 30 people in the chat. The comic we were looking at was Roots of Swamp Thing 1. Going to switch up our cams. Got 2 more vids to shoot, and we're making like super good time, so maybe we just chill with the Kayfabers for a little while, Jimmy.
Sounds good to me.
I'll hang out with the crew for a second while Jimmy's off doing his thing. You guys, if you have any Klaus Janson questions, we're looking at Daredevil 190, Punisher 1 and 2. Daredevil 190, Klaus is working with over top of Frank Miller breakdowns and doing a complete art over top of that, inking, coloring. And then Punisher, he's doing all art chores. We're going to ask him how Mike Baron delivered the scripts, if he was getting thumbnails and roughs, if he adhered to those Mike Baron thumbnails and roughs. But any Klaus questions you have, let us know. Jimmy, why don't you take it with the guys? Let me go grab my phone. I'm going to make another tea.
Do your thing.
But we got 2 more vids to do before we break stuff down and get set up for Klaus.
So here's a question for all of you guys at home. The Taschen does they do sales periodically. They have one going on now until February 5th, and I always look at what they have. And one of their big sell items is that EC book, the giant oversized hardcover. It's like $200 on sale for $120. Who has that book, and what is great about it? Because one, it's not cheap even on sale, but also like those gigantic books. How much space does everybody have? You know what I mean? Like if I'm gonna bring home a book like that, it's gonna encroach on my living space quite a bit. So what's great about that book? Because I like that oversized formula. I like EC Comics, and I haven't seen one of those in person. So if anybody at home has one, let's hear some highlights. Yeah, Star Scrunch. Tell us about it, man. What all's in that book? What makes it so special? Because I have some EC books, of course. I have some of the library sets. I have some of the reprints that like Fantagraphics has done. And EC's on my mind. We're going to be talking about an EC book here in a couple of minutes with Ed. But I am curious about the Taschen edition. Yeah, my birthday cake this year was a special one. We started making birthday cakes for each other, my wife and I, and this year's birthday cake was probably the best cake I've ever had in my life. It did not last long. I had family over, so it was a big hit. Probably a good thing. Last year she made a butterscotch cake, and then she went to her parents in Florida and left me home alone with that, basically the entire butterscotch 5-layer cake. and it did not. That's too much cake for one person to eat, even across the week. It's too much cake.
Jimmy, you said Cashin's doing the fire sale?
I don't know if it's a fire sale, but it's a big sale, like 15 pages worth of stuff for sale.
Yeah.
And the big one that I saw is that EC book.
Man, that's how I get my Crumb sketchbooks.
Yeah, I've gotten Crumb sketchbooks from them.
I have 6. Do you think there's any more?
I don't know. I don't know if there are more than that or not. And I don't know if they're even on sale this time. I didn't see them. I haven't gone through the whole list because it's only from today until the February 5th. So I looked at it for a second this morning, but didn't have a chance to go through all of it. I looked at that, and I looked at the big Spider-Man book.
Yeah.
And the Spider-Man book is not for sale.
They
or not on sale, I should say.
They approached me to do the text for the X-Men one of those, and they pay $2,500 for that text piece. They want 20,000 words. That's like a third of a novel.
Yeah, it's a
for
lot.
$2,500. And I was
20,000 words is massive.
Yeah, it's dozens of pages of text like that. I guess like Ralph Macchio does, or Kurt Busiek does. But it's like, motherfuckers, like, I still got a career going. Like, I can't do no retrospective writing for $2,500. Like, write a whole book, a third of a novel for you. That just ain't happening.
Yeah. Simon says he has an 8-page backup due next week. Any tips for tendonitis? I have not tried this yet, Simon, but I have thought a lot about soaking my hand or wrist in ice water at the end of the days. And my reason for thinking that is just hearing about like wrestlers and athletes and what they do in terms of icing. Yeah. After an event. So the icing is to reduce inflammation, which is where a lot of your pain is going to come from if you're if you're pushing those tendons and muscles and bones and everything too hard. So that's something that's on my idea of like things to try for mostly pain prevention and over longevity health, physical health, all that stuff. But I haven't actually done it yet. So it's something to consider, Simon. And if you do go that route, stop in next week and let us know how that goes. But inflammation's the thing that you're trying to fight, I think. Yeah, Marsh says to get some help. So that's another thing, man. Get your buddies in there. That's what guys, for the history of comics, that's what's happened when deadlines become a crunch is you bring some of your buddies in and you pass pages around, especially for inking, backgrounds, things like that.
The old timers will tell you that you're also not inking correctly. That it's not wrist action. It's not this. You don't do because like repetitive motion is how you get your carpal tunnel shit, and you don't do this. You kind of ink like that. You keep that wrist stationary. You use your shoulders. You barely bend your elbow. Like you just kind of like move your arm rather than just like your wrist to do like little ticks. So you gotta do some ergonomics also, man, because no offense, man, I'm sure I ink way more than you, and I don't have any issues. So you need to take care of it from that level.
Yeah, I sleep with the wrist brace.
Yeah, me too.
And I have for almost 20 years. Like I started doing it, I think right before I quit my job, as again preventative.
Yeah, ounce of prevention, pound of cure.
And I've had I think I've had good luck with it. I've had no wrist pains, so that's one thing. Devin asked if I'm still running. So, Devin, I have gotten into the worst shape of my life, literally, probably, bottoming out around New Year's this year. And I have been running slowly and short distances at the gym. Part of getting up at 5 in the morning is followed by going to the gym each morning.
Sure.
And, I'm hoping to get back into shape for any, million of reasons, just to feel better.
Yeah.
But it helps with sitting around and drawing comics. I've heard various people talk about it. Like one of the first times I saw somebody talk about getting in shape was Gary Kasparov, the chess champion, would talk about training before chess tournaments. And I remember being like, what? You're a chess player. Like, you're sitting there. But, there's so much more to it. Like, I always say, like, the exercise is more mental for me than anything else. Like, people talk about, like, you can't really out-exercise a bad diet. So if you're interested in weight loss or something, there's other ways to do it. But I feel like the exercise part's a mental thing. And so if you're doing something of, sitting around drawing comics for 10 hours a day or something like that, I think the exercise is a big piece of that. And Kasparov's the first guy I saw really kind of, like, put that into... the idea that the mental part will be improved from the exercise part.
Yeah, lot of insomnia in comics. A lot of people that have a hard time getting to sleep because they're not, hanging drywall. Like my pops, who worked in the steel mill, never had trouble sleeping at night after a hard day's work, and exercising those muscles and stuff. I'm a bike dude. Like when COVID started, I got this bike to just give myself an activity to do outdoors. Fucking fell in love with that shit. Come March, it's pretty much decent enough to go out and start the run all over again, man. And always start from position of zero, of just like, holy fuck, I'm gassed.
Yeah.
But it doesn't take that much long. Like the body does not want to be unfit, and you will build muscle pretty quick if you're not in the best shape. It plateaus after a while. Like it becomes a slower growth. But every March, man, like the weight just drips off, and the distances can go longer and longer to the point where it's like you can just do shit all day.
Yeah, I used to notice like you, I would start running. I'd taper off in the cold weather, and every year though it would take longer to get back into shape.
Yeah,
that's the bummer part. Like in my mind, like I think about this right now, trying to get back into shape, and it's almost like you just got to stay. You got to maintain it as you get older, because it's so hard to get back into shape.
And then of course just doing it.
There's a mental piece of that too. Like when you get up every morning at 5, like you've already won the first battle.
Yeah, get up and you gotta leave. Like you just gotta get up. Don't look at that fucking phone. Like I like to be back from a bike ride, from a 20-mile bike ride, before anybody else is up, even making breakfast. That shit is cool.
I'm gonna plug this phone in.
Oh, guys, by the way, man, because you're here early, we could show you. We're gonna be looking at this hardcover Domu that is rare. There's only 5,000 of them. There are 5 of them up on eBay. Right now, they are not cheap. The cheapest one is over $400. But having it and looking at it compared to what we got here in the States, or even a tankobon that you could get from Japan, this is the ideal format to enjoy that comic, that artwork, and you'll hear us talk about it a little bit. It cost me like $170. There's an extra piece to this that I don't have, which is just a cardboard box that it comes packaged in, and there's a little ding on my slipcase and stuff, which adds to the cheapness of my version. But just a remarkable book. Unbelievable. We had no idea when you have the cardboard box on the exterior. If you do not read Japanese, you do not know that it is Domu. So it's a window book at Nakano Broadway, at the Mandarake.
And rightfully so.
But it's in the cardboard box. We had no idea. So we had
we
had Koenji Sean was kicking it with us, Japan Book Hunter on Instagram, and he is like, "Oh, this is that. Oh, that cardboard, that's Domu." And I'm standing there with Jeff Darrow, and I'm like, "Can you imagine that 2-page spread with Old Man Cho's face? What that must look like? It must be the size of the original art, yada yada." And then Jeff Darrow was a baller, and he was like, "Well, let's find out." And just on the spot, fucking bought the book, man. And then we cracked it right open.
How many pages do you look at before you're like, "Yo, they have a second one of those"? I'll be back, Jeff.
I'm such a cheapskate.
I hear you.
That I was like, well, it just ain't even a thought in my mind. But when I went to did Tokyo Comic Con, and I just made so much loot and was like, fuck it, I'm just buying everything I want. Like, this will never be as cheap as it was.
That's true.
You know, it's never going to go down.
Mm.
I just want to get a couple.
Yeah, I'm trying not to say stuff that I want to say on video.
Yeah.
About it as you're flipping through there. Man, everybody talking about Domu now. You know that you held that up.
Yeah.
And again, I want to say this stuff on the air, but it is nuts how hard it is to get a copy.
Oh, dude! Like, there's
why
stuff
is
to
this
say on the
stuff
air.
out of print? Like, what the heck?
There's stuff to say on the air for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Ooh, you know what else people were talking about is that Frazetta Taschen book. I didn't look that one up to see if that one was on sale.
Yeah, it's pretty new, so I bet it's not. But they do have the fire sale. It happens before Heroes, like around that time when it starts like springtime. It's like a spring sale or something.
Yeah, I don't know what this one is all of a sudden popping up. But like I said, I haven't gone through the whole thing, so it's hard to tell what else is in there.
Yeah.
I got a wrestling photo book there, I think from that fire sale a year or two ago. That was pretty cool. It's like 400 or 500 pages, and it's just all these. I think the photographer was in the L.A. area, so it'd be whoever would come through that territory, and everybody, you know, like all those territories, all the big guys would come through.
Right.
But it's amazing to see like the photos of wrestlers where it'd be like in the backstage, right? So you're getting maybe a publicity shot, something, a headshot they could sell or whatever.
Right.
But it's all those full figures, and it's almost like it's the equivalent of a promo, except it's just a photo, right?
Yeah.
It's like strike your pose, you know, if you're that Monster Hill, let's see the scary face, and you know sometimes it'd be bloody after a match or whatever. Those photos are so interesting. Reminds me of the Jaime, that Queen of the Rings, where he's talking about like what you can read into the character from the little bit of visuals that they bring to a pose, to a stance, to the body language, to if they have a prop in their hand. I think all of that stuff is huge, man, for comic book artists. You know, anything that you can add to a character through a simple costume choice, a simple gesture, that stuff is gold.
Such a prized comic this is to me.
It's one of those on that short list for me of perfect books.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And it's so interesting because it kind of resides in that spot between what I think of as a novel and a short story,
Right.
and just damn perfect.
Yeah, no wasted movement.
Right. Yeah. Everything means something. All the characters are important.
I'm just looking for that one iconic shot, and then I'll be good. Ah, there we go. We'll take a little bit of caffeine, and then we'll get rocking.
Man, that thing talking like health stuff, dude. At 46, like people die at this age. Out of nowhere.
I mean, we got friends that get heart attacks and shit now, man. We're that old.
You do kind of start thinking about it, man. You lose somebody your age, you really start thinking about those things.
Yeah, man. It is crazy because, like, at this point, I've been doing this shit half my life. You know, almost 100% of my adult life, man, since I was 21. So time just time compresses in a weird way. Or I just feel like the same dude, but it just ain't true. It just ain't true, man.
Yeah, I think there's definitely, I don't know, maybe decades or so. Like each decade, maybe you get that, like, it's a change.
Yeah.
Couple 46-year-olds watching. Not too surprising.
Yeah, that's our
Based on
demo.
our analytics.
That's our demo. You know what? Look on this shit. Good shit. And then try to do something with this and see if that's okay. That looks good. That looks
Yeah,
fine.
it's fine. Happy birthday, Chuck. Turns 50 tomorrow. That's a big one. I don't know what I'd do for 50. Got to do something now. Have a party.
Your silver anniversary
Yeah.
of life. And it's fun, like messing with my parents too. Whenever they start talking that shit, man, it's like, listen, man, you got a 40-year-old kid. What are you talking about? That's how old you are.
That's right. You all ready?
Yes, sir. Welcome to Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Ed Piskor.
I'm Jim Rugg.
Going to be taking a look at an important document today on Cartoonist Kayfabe. But first, I got to let you guys know that we do have a Patreon, and our biggest supporters get all the videos first. Plus, they are watching us stream this video in real time, and I do think that this is going to be a book that is going to get hit by that kayfabe effect because it's a rare book, it's an expensive book, and there are right now 5 up on eBay. Will there be 5 much longer after this video goes live? Will they even be there by the time this video goes live? If we got some real ballers in the chat room right at this moment. But the videos are brought to you by the books that we make. This is our bibliography right here. Right now I have Red Room Crypto Killers issue 1 on solicitation for your comic shop. So go put in those pre-orders so that we know how many of these things to print up for you. 2 other trade paperbacks for Red Room are out there. Hip Hop Family Tree celebrating its 10-year anniversary. X-Men Grand Design. WYSIWYG is out there. Jimmy has a forthcoming Hulk Grand Design trade paperback in that Treasury Edition format is on its way. Street Angel Deadliest Girl Alive is out there. Street Angel Princess of Poverty is available for pre-order. Plain Janes, all kinds of stuff we have out in the wild. Now that we're done paying those bills, let's take a look at the definitive way to read Domu.
Man, talk about definitive right from the get-go. The slipcase, gold embossed lettering. Wow. That is the way to present this stuff, man.
There is an additional piece to this. See, here's the book that is inside of the slipcase here. And then there is an outer cardboard box that this all comes in. So you should know that, like, because if you're going to spend $400 or something, you probably want all of it, like every piece of it. So if you see one online, they don't have the cardboard box, they're still trying to get comparable prices to the cardboard box things. You could probably talk them down a little bit with that knowledge. Like, hey, I know that there was like another piece to this. And the Mandarakes in Tokyo, they knocked significant prices off when the box was dinged up, when the slipcase is dinged up. So take all of that into account whenever you're trying to make your purchase. But we were out there in Nakano Broadway Mall, Jeff Darrow, me and the crew, and in the hallway they have the wall books, you know, the glass case books. And I don't think it says the word Domu in Roman letters on that cardboard box. So Koenji Sean, the Japan book hunter, kicking it with us, railing, naming shit off. Oh, this is that. Oh, this is the last Kaze Shinobu Tankobon that I need. This is that. Oh, down there, that's Domu. They just pointed to that cardboard box. We're like, what? That's Domu?
That's a big box.
At this size? Right. It must be the size of the original artwork, which it is. Guys, this is the presentation for Domu that we got, which, when I divulged that information to the guys in Japan and told them that this shit came out in like 1995, they were laughing. That's so late. That's more than a decade after the shit came out. It hurts my feelings that we don't get the wide breadth of like what comics is, man, because of rights issues, because the creator doesn't want to have comics reprinted at a certain time or whatever. I cherished this thing when I saw it. I knew that it was forthcoming by way of Wizard Magazine. You know, they really started to do a lot more manga content in the magazine, like right before this came out. So this was forthcoming, and scooped these up for nothing in boxes of comics. My dad got, like, you know, for $8 got 4 full boxes of comics, $2 a box, and these were just nestled in there. Probably some of the earliest manga I read. And this is one of the earliest videos on the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel that we sort of dissected and talked about the thing, looking at Katsuhiro Otomo's body of work.
Yeah, one of the really fun early discussions, I think Tom might have been a part of that.
Absolutely.
And you know, I've said it probably in those videos and in other videos, but I mean, this is one of those short lists for me of like perfect books.
Yeah.
You know, even beyond comics, like it's somewhere between a novel and a short story and it's flawless. And my admiration for short stories is there's no room for waste. Like a perfect short story, everything makes, is important, is valuable, makes sense. All the characters are vital. And that's what you get in this. And it's so rich.
I want you to hold on to those books, Jimmy, and where I have stuff flagged, I want you to pass those books over.
I'm really glad you mentioned that this is the original art size.
Yes.
Because that's what I was going to ask about. It's great that you have that info. Could you imagine the artist edition, right? Like it's essentially what you've got here, almost.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, it doesn't have the sort of marginalia and all that. This is artwork that is prepared for black and white line reproduction, but the thing is, having it at this giant size, I'm seeing lines that I recognize. Now, don't mistake me for saying I think I could do this, but I make lines on paper that resemble this. What I'm taking a look at and responding to right here is, like, at this level, you get to see, like, little choices that are made. Okay, there's, like, little blips, little chunks taken out of the zips. Look at the fidelity, like, it's still in there, but I can understand these dot screens. It's very educational for if you're going to use Zipatone yourself. Grab some zip screens yourself, compare them to the different tones that Otomo is using in his comic. The lines all make sense. I could tell what's a tech pen. I could tell what everything is. And when you see stuff at this scale, it's only that much more humbling an experience to see what this guy's doing. It's on great paper.
It's absolutely stunning, the reproduction, because these lines are so fine and they are crisp.
Talking to some people from Japan, like I'm a part of the Katsuhiro Otomo sort of fan club on Facebook, or people share a bunch of cool stuff. And a lot of those guys who were aware of this exact Domu presentation said that, Japan is a humid island, and this paper just sucks up that fucking moisture, and you will get little mildew dots on your paper. And there are people who said that they never saw a good copy because there would be just like yellow dots and stuff. There's none of that on this. Very thankful about that. And maybe if you're about to make that $400 purchase on eBay, Amazon, you ask for the guys to give you a little spin through if that's a big concern to you.
Yeah, that would be a concern of mine. That would be an expensive book in my collection.
For sure, man. For sure. Once again, like, there are these iconic moments, and comparing them with, like, the material that we have, right here you could see it's a good image, right? It's flipped for America. So we read left to right.
It's interesting they don't flip the images. These two images, and I don't know if that's a sword thing, like we've heard that in samurai manga.
What's funny is at a certain point when we get to the big facial splash page, they did flip that, which is very curious. There's no reason for that.
That's so interesting, the flips and not flips.
Yeah.
Because like that last big page that we looked at was flipped.
Yeah.
But here, like, none of this is flipped.
No.
The page order is different, but
yeah.
the actual content of the page is not flipped. It really feels like a different book. We looked at this off camera when you first got back from Japan, and I can remember flipping through this and just like I had never seen it before.
You can't imagine it being printed at a small size.
No.
When you see it at this gigantic scale.
Very heartbreaking in a lot of ways that this can exist,
right?
And yet we don't have access to it in English in an affordable edition.
Yeah.
Like, come on, publishers here, beg Otomo, like, do whatever you got to do, man. It's a crime against book lovers not to have this available.
It's just so instructive to see the work at the size that the guy drew it, and seeing the confidence that he had to just allow there to be some white space.
It's amazing to see these figures and how they look. If this were the printed final size, I would think, wow, that's really expressive. The fidelity, the facial features, they're all so tight. And to think like this is actual size of the drawing.
Right.
It's kind of unreal.
And once again, these are marks that we can make.
How close is he looking at this? Like, does he have a loop? Like, how are we drawing this kind of detail?
Yeah, they are very used to drawing very, very tiny in very, small details. But you could also really appreciate the use of Zipatone and how he sort of cuts things off to create that dimensionality.
Mm-hmm.
it's one of the great tricks in Zipatone is like if you have just like a pure gray, you just chip a little bit of it off and it creates that 3D.
Yeah, it's a real masterpiece. It's painting in black and white.
Yeah.
And to do it in so much line is remarkable.
Let's look at some of the big moments from the comic. What do we got here?
I don't know where that one's at.
That might be page 1 of this. Yeah. But you see, that's flipped for no real reason.
You know, you almost get a feeling of the artist edition too, because you can see like inconsistencies in the ink there where it's a little bit thinner.
Yes.
So like comparing it to the printed page where that's flat black, you can see a little bit more nuance in what they're reproducing here.
And what we're looking at, because I bet you it's still black and white line repro, but he's sort of bitmapped out in a way like whenever they photograph it. But we looked at Ganga, I believe, and this stuff that you're seeing as black for this presentation is actually a wash with like a processed red or a red watercolor. So it's being interpreted into black and white for this particular process.
It's great to see the blood splatter too, because I feel like most of us have done blood splatter in some way or another in our comics. And it's one of those weird, like, how do you actually draw this and make it look good? So it's kind of cool to see master blood splatter.
Sure. And I mean, it's like a Dexter level of thought where, you know, you got this like the point of impact was here. The thing happened here. You got the handprints, but like it's coming out from this center point. I mean, maybe that's right where he fucking slit his own throat.
Wild.
Seeing it at this level, you could almost want to throw up too. Probably in red as well here. In the printed book. That's the other thing, man. Unless you get, I think if you get the new complete Otomo Domu, it includes the colored pieces that begin each section. And there was the Art of Wall exhibit interview that we did, or no, it was with Ganga. There was a bunch of interviews in there. And somebody sent us PDFs of the actual interview content because it's in Japanese. And Domu is one of these very rare instances where the magazine where the story was initially being serialized was it got canceled. So Katsuhiro Otomo, did not finish telling the story that he wanted to tell and just did an extra 80 pages in the Tankobon format, which is sort of unheard of. It would be like the idea of doing an original graphic novel, just it wasn't done. But he needed to do that to finish off this very tight narrative that he was putting together. So the last chunk of this stuff is all, you know, him like living off of savings basically, or maybe in advance.
What a great panel. Catching the motion of the car lights.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really cool use of perspective.
Speaking of cool use of perspective, huh? And once again, he tricks you into, because you understand these lines, I think it is inspiring. Like, oh, I should get to drawing. Do you have the hand that Otomo does? No, you do not. And you accept that. But you fucking make your comics anyways.
Yeah, no doubt. I wonder if he had a model. I know that, you know, like this building was maybe loosely based on a nearby building, but it's such a realized environment.
Yeah, it's the projects that he grew up in. Like that is the building that he used. Whenever he's doing this taper thing, you know, you see this with the lighting, with the zips. You'll see many different interpretations of it. And the cool thing about seeing it at this size is if he's not using a flowing blended set of zips, he's playing with like say 5% different screens on each wall.
Genius.
Yeah.
Wow.
Still doing the same amount of cutting.
Yeah, the cutting's crazy. Yeah, I forgot that's where he grew up. That makes total sense because there's such a personality of this structure.
Right.
Man, again with these perspectives, incredible. This book is so underrated, and it could be because it just isn't seen as much here. Like, people don't get it.
That's it, man. I mean, we find copies out in the wild. Like, people are selling these things $100 an issue, the Dark Horse joints. We've seen them for $1. I've bought whenever I see
Every
them. I
time
buy
I
them.
see them, I buy them in a dollar bin.
Yeah.
It's not that often, but you're right. I've pulled quite a few out over the years.
There was that time we were down in Heroes taking a look at through the warehouse and Shelton was like, put a box together of whatever you want, man. This is like our dollar stuff. You could just take it. And being honest, man, we saw those Domus and they're like, Shelton, these are more than $1, man.
Yeah, yeah.
These are very much more than $1. You know, this great moment. We need that piece. Let's take a look and see what that looks like under the big screen.
Yeah, one of the all-time greats. Again, talk about physics. You know, you were showing off a Red Room page earlier, Ed, where it's like you got to put the foot on the guy's head if you're going to pull this knife through.
Right.
That's what you're getting here. It's how you sell this stuff in comics. And having that impact used to blow me away. Not just this book. I didn't read this book till I was an adult. But you have those moments in superhero fights once in a while. You'll see it where it's like, that feels real. Feels weighted.
Let's construct our YouTube thumbnail.
Yes.
Because this is the image when we saw the cardboard box where we were like, imagine with that 2-page spread, Old Man Cho portrait when he's all freaked out. What must that look like? Looking deep, looking very closely, there's a lot of tech pen used. A lot of rapidograph. I like to see that his rapidographs get clogged up, but maybe that's technique, you know?
Yeah, that could be just the inconsistency of the ink flow as you're like, because I mean, these are,
If he's doing it quick.
This is a fast move. I just saw James Jean post a video. He had done the whale poster, which is a super close up of Brandon Fraser's face, right? And he showed a video of him drawing it, and it was with microns because it's this kind of treatment.
Yeah.
And I wonder if this was something that was an inspiration for him because build wise, very similar.
Right.
You know, like imagine you look at this and you think about, I mean, just physically the amount of time to put that many lines on a piece of paper.
Yeah. And you cannot allow an assistant to fuck with this. Like, you have to do the hand. See, this is one of those funny pieces where...
Boy, that might be your thumbnail, Ed.
It is the thumbnail. Like,
That's a great,
like
the two together like that.
I put this image up on Instagram, and it's the most popular image I ever put on my Instagram. So,
Wild.
so this should be the YouTube thumbnail. Let me get my fingers out of that. But you see, the face is flipped.
Mm-hmm.
For whatever reason. There's no good reason why the face is flipped. Maybe it's just inertia. They were just going through the motions.
Yeah, it's odd.
And flipping a bunch of faces. But the bottom small image is what we got to have here in the States. And that big piece, that's what you're paying for.
Unreal.
Isn't that fantastic, Jimmy?
It is such a teacher of cross-hatching.
Yes, it is.
You know, like watching how these crosshatch lines, which are almost perpendicular, come out of the shadow behind this collar. It's just amazing. And to be able to do flesh, because we often talk about this, like how do you make lines that wrap around a form that describe that solid three-dimensional feeling? And a face is round. So now it's imperative that you get those lines right in order to feel round.
Yeah.
And you could study this all day for those qualities.
Using hatching as color in places as well as shadow. You know, like this is a darker value than this outer shirt. This kind of area, well, no, that's definitely a shadow. But he's using crosshatch for many different reasons. Using these like little lines, and it really does create that woven texture. You know, like on the cardigan here. Feels like an old man shirt. And then all the little like Morgan Freeman joints all over his face. His little freckles and shit.
Mm-hmm.
That's perfect.
Yeah, it really is.
Hatching on an eyeball is something that intimidated the hell out of me growing up and stuff.
Always
man.
admire that. Yeah.
Like you gotta hatch the eyeball. An eyeball is not just white.
Even the edges of your irises. You know, how often have you looked really close? You know, you take that photo of your eye and you just really zoom in and look. It's really great to see it here like this.
Yeah.
And those lines tighten up so fast whenever it's shrunk down. You know what else I see when I look at this is some of Jack Davis's pen work. Sure. Because sometimes he'll go heavy hatching. Like if you look at like Humbug era Jack Davis where it's all pen.
Yeah.
You can see some of these qualities, you know, where it's like those hatches really are able to describe almost anything.
Mm-hmm.
Man.
This is one of those things, man. Just a
What a marvel.
humbling effort. Could not wait to see what this looked like. And King Kayfabers in the chat room as we finish this video. When it's when we close out of here, and those of you out there who decide to pull the trigger, let us know. Who are the big willies out there, man, that see the inspiration that this sort of generates, and who want to have that kind of high fidelity piece of Katsuhiro Otomo art in their house? Big book, expensive book, rare book. Only 5,000 of these things are out there. Me and Jeff Darrow are two people of those
4,998 out there now.
Yes, sir, man. Jimmy, you good to go?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
What I'm so happy to see this thing, man. I had no idea it even existed before you brought it back.
Me neither. We found out in real time and made impulse buys that were very, very fortuitous, and just knew that it was never. You'll never get it cheaper. Kayfabers, like, follow, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the bell. We'll notify you when new vids are available. And like I said up front, we do have a Patreon, and the people who are watching us stream this live on the Patreon, or who have gotten this video first on the Patreon, they have first dibs to buy this book off of Amazon, eBay, whatever aftermarket you find, and there are a very finite amount of copies of these out there. Otherwise, Jimmy, tell them what we have out there, man, that help keep the lights on for the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel.
Hulk Grand Design, Street Angel Princess of Poverty, Street Angel Deadliest Girl Alive, and The Plain Janes are my latest, greatest books. Grab those wherever books are bought and sold, including your local comic shop, man. Reserve those books today, because some of them probably aren't going to be around in print for very long. You can also join me on patreon.com/JimRugg, where you can download my out-of-print zines and mini-comics. You can see a lot of my original art and what I'm working on next. And just recently posted some Blue Line templates that you can download. Anybody can download them. Those are free to the public. So sharing some of those making tools online.
Red Room Crypto Killers issue 1 is being solicited to your comic shop right now. Put in your pre-orders at this moment. I have 2 trade paperbacks for Red Room Out in the Wild, Red Room The Antisocial Network, and Red Room Trigger Warnings. Get your hands on those comics. Each contain 4 self-contained stories. I'm serializing the new Red Room stuff on my Patreon for $3. I'm more than 300 pages up there right now. New ships every Tuesday. It's the 10th anniversary of Hip Hop Family Tree. 4 volumes of that out there. Check that comic out. X-Men Grand Design. 3 volumes of that are out in the wild. You might find the occasional WYSIWYG if you look hard enough. Jimmy, tell the people what else we have out there, man.
Subscribe to the Cartoonist Kayfabe newsletter at the links below this video. You can also find Cartoonist Kayfabe t-shirts, merchandise, stickers, mugs, hats, fanny packs, all kinds of great stuff at our spread shop. That link is also below this video.
Give them those marching orders, Jimmy. We'll be on our way.
Read more manga.
So, Kayfabers, man, who's pulling the trigger? Who has the FOMO? Who has the FOMO? And doesn't want to miss out on this thing, man. They're all coming from Japan too. All the books.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Somebody did say that at least one of those editions does have the mold on the edges visible.
You gotta talk to that. Gotta talk to that seller. You might get a discount.
Yeah, it's tempting, Ed. You know, I feel like we're talking about this around my birthday. It's real tempting to
I asked you, man,
to think about it.
Because, like, when it's birthday time, like, I get myself something.
Yeah. But, man, also, I would just stress for everybody, if you have not read Domu, find yourself an English version that you can pick up, because it really is a special book. It's not just beautiful art.
And fuck it, man. Like, it hasn't been in public, like, it hasn't been printed in 25 years. Fucking go get a bootleg. You know, it's a time. It's when you need to get a bootleg. If they're not going to serve you, you gotta get it yourself, and you gotta give it a good read.
I'm really excited by the people talking about bootlegs. I feel like that talk has come up quite a bit more since we've been showing off some of these books.
Yeah, man.
I'm so excited to see that stuff rolling in and see what people are making out there.
Guys, we got our first Death of Superman.
It's very true, yeah.
Comic. You know, it doesn't hit the mark for me, but I have a feeling we're going to get many.
I see so much
Death
of them
of
in
Superman
progress
comics.
online.
So, like, I'll put that to the side as we accumulate Death of Supermans that, like, might not hit the mark. Because, like, the ones that really fucking are solid, they get their own episode. Hands down. But if there's ones that, like, if you have an accumulation of them at, like, a different level.
I was thinking the same thing.
Like, that's pretty fucking, that's a statement. That is a statement. Just that, you know, you need some company, man, while you're making comics and stuff. It's just good to hear a human voice. And I was always using these retro video game channels and shit. And we have created the YouTube channel that I wish I had to just listen to, man. And it's a cool community that has been generated from these efforts, man. I'm just super, super thankful because it's exactly where my head is. None of the other comic YouTube channels were doing it for me. It was reportage. You know, it's just like giving us facts about stuff. It's like, I know that shit. Not doing it for me. To sort of get into comics at this level. And it's the King Kayfabers. I was thinking about this, man. The people who like invest at this level, who are in the chat room at like 9 in the morning or whatever the fuck time it is.
9:30, by the way.
Yeah, we're still real good on time.
We are good on time, but think how much we've done so far. It's 9:30.
Yeah. You know what? Like I might even just like crack another like Looky Luke type comic just for the fuck of it. We have that time, you know. They keep up. Like these people can keep up because like what is it in one session? We're looking at a manga. We're looking at an art book. We're looking at a Silver Age comic. All this shit, and in real time, like they're all keeping up. And might not be to everybody's taste everything, but they see the energy. You know, it's important to witness that we're agnostic about that shit.
Yeah, you know, I get reminders now and then of what things used to be like. Like I saw Don Simpson was posting about whenever he did Megaton Man, he found rejection letters that he posted on Facebook.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how, like, you know, in the 80s when he's doing that stuff, like superheroes, you couldn't bring a superhero to Fantagraphics in 1985.
It's crazy that...
The lines of divide were just like, it was a war.
Yeah.
And I remember that a little bit. And I have friends who are older that still kind of talk in those terms. You know, I think that you never... If you're scarred from that, you never necessarily get over it. But now it's like everything, you know, like I agree, man. That's what I want this channel to be too. Like I want you to come here and see that Silver Age and to see that fan made and to see manga and all these things. But dude, when we started reading, that did not exist.
Right.
You were not able to talk about multiple veins of comics with the same person.
And when it would be done, it would be with irony.
Right, and I remember it happening like when we start making, like in the early 2000s, I can remember going to whatever show, from SPX to Heroes, you know, you get these different groups of artists around you that you're talking with. And I can remember it was almost like, how do you guys talk about these two things at once?
Right.
And now it's just the norm, but man, it was that division was real. It was very solid.
All right, so the next thing we're going to look at is this Ray Bradbury Home to Stay complete collection of the Ray Bradbury EC stories. The video, we're calling it something like EC Comics, Guilty of Plagiarism. Because unfortunately, the human animal likes negativity. So people are going to see that plagiarism thing in the title, and they're going to click it. It's just like, we're not here to fucking not get hits. But that's the book that we're looking at. And I'm going to think about it. I might just put, isn't that cool? Like, even the names here have a deboss and gloss.
Yeah.
Even like the lettering here has a deboss and gloss. $75 book.
I was going to ask what the price was, yeah. It's one of the fringe benefits of Kayfabe.
Yes, sir. You know, and
I don't even know where I get some of these books anymore.
I will say it on the channel, like exactly how we got these books. I will tell you. No problem. I have this out because this is the fateful Haunt of Fear issue that I scooped up from Shop and Save. That has the Black Ferris, but like November 1991. I'm born in 82. Like I'm 9 years old here. Like I got to experience these EC comics like any 9-year-old did in like 1954. Yeah. Look at that shit. How do you think a little kid processes this guy? You know what I mean?
Wow.
And you could tell this motherfucker is read.
That's the classic, the newsprint, what'll happen. You know, a well-read newsprint.
We should save it all. Because this is a story that, like, I wrote about this in that Wally Wood book. Like, in my introduction, where I, like, looked at that, and I'm copying drawings, and I was copying this shit. And it's like, I'll never get to draw comics. If this is what comic art is, I'm never going to be that good.
Yeah, this is a good one. All right.
Give me a second here. I don't know if this can all be in the image. Like I'll just no. So I'll just do it this way. All right, Jimmy. Welcome to Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Ed Piscor.
I'm Jim Rugg.
Comic publisher, guilty of plagiarism, subject of today's conversation. But first, got to let you guys know that we do have a Patreon, and our biggest supporters are A, watching us right this very minute, and B, they're getting all the videos before anybody else, completely mitigating the kayfabe effect. So the Patreon pays for itself. If there's a book we talk about that you want, that becomes very expensive on the aftermarket. But the videos are brought to you by the books that we make, and you're looking at a bunch of them right here. So Poverty is forthcoming. Plain Jane's is out there, and a whole bunch of other stuff coming to you in the future. Without further ado, Jimmy, we have from Fantagraphics, You Can't Disable the Power of My Label, Ray Bradbury, Home to Stay, the complete Ray Bradbury EC Comics stories. Shouts to Uncle Mike Catron, who sent these to us after taking a look at our Love and Rockets box set video, where we were very vocal about, Fantagraphics, we're friends. Send us comics, whatever press comics you have. You got to send a set to us to shout about the books on our giant wide platform. We will pick and choose. Like there's stuff that we'll talk about, there's stuff that we don't give a fuck about. But the good stuff gets some dedication on the channel. Mike hits us up and is like, want that Ray Bradbury joint? And I said, fuck yes, I want that Ray Bradbury joint.
It is sweet. Amazing
Way to kind of package another round of EC Comics. You've seen it packaged 1,000 different ways. And Fantagraphics will do this stuff that's like, artist based, where it's like, here's the George Evans book of a bunch of stories, here's the Jack Davis book of a bunch of stories. I like the smorgasbord. EC Comics, to me, it's an anthology. Like, I don't want 100 Wally Wood stories at once necessarily. I want to see Jack Davis against Bill Elder, yada yada. You're getting that here with all the artists involved throughout the 4 or so 5-year association Ray Bradbury had with EC Comics that came about through plagiarism, essentially.
Yes. This is an absolutely brilliant book. You just don't know how these weeks are going to go whenever we're like, let's do this book, let's do that book. What a pleasure to spend a week looking at this book every night. I think, as you say, these comics have been basically in print since the 50s, in one form or another. This is a brilliant way to package them. And for people watching at home that maybe don't own any EC, what a way to jump into the deep end, because you get so many of those artists represented. And this edition itself, as we get into it, the art is gorgeous. Yes. It makes me wonder, it feels like the same size or damn close to the same size as those library set editions. The box sets. Very close to that. And so you get that oversize, you get the black and white, which really shows off these artists nicely, and it's crisp.
Yes.
Some of the fine lines, man, beautiful reproductions on this thing.
Ray Bradbury, up to this point, had, I think, 2 collections out of short stories, because they print up one of his bios from the issues in the back here, and he's working on the 3rd book collection, which would be...
That's probably right here, right? His bio? Or this is the update. This is the current. Gotcha.
Yeah, there's the one that they would do on all the artists. That would be on the inside covers. Try to find that real quick.
One of the interesting back matter stories is whenever he realizes that EC's using his stories, he can't even afford the lawyer costs to take him to court. And instead writes this clever letter that's pretty well known, saying, "Oh, you guys, you forgot to pay me for that one," and what a great marriage.
The revelation was that he was prepared to sue them. He was prepared to just go do what one does when they see that their work is being plagiarized. You sue them. The lawyers wanted $2,000. I didn't have $2,000 thinking money, because that's what the lawyers wanted for a retainer to do it. And in his words, he said, more people should be Christian minded and good citizens and think positive about their fellow man. So he thought of this approach. You need the letter, right? Like, this book cannot exist if you do not print that letter in its pages, which they were very good about doing. And not only is he like, listen, yeah, send me that check for $50, but what if we do more? What if you do a whole issue of my stuff? It must be a gas to see your work sort of adapted in this way, especially if you're Ray Bradbury, who is a comic fan, who, as a kid, part of fandom, he was a part of fandom with Isaac Asimov and the editors of DC Comics, Julie Schwartz, like all those guys. They were the early fandom guys, man. He was clipping out Buck Rogers and all of that kind of material from the daily strips, and said that, you know, his mom got rid of this shit. So this dude is deep.
Yeah, and I mean, finds his story because he's buying these EC comics.
We'll cut that. Some reader brings these comics to Ray Bradbury, is like, hey man, they're adapting your shit. And he makes note of that. The cool thing about this book, the way that it's laid out, you have Dark Carnival, which is a Ray Bradbury collection. You have Dark Carnival Variations. These are some of the first adaptations EC would do in crunch time. In this forward matter here, this frontis work, talks about how Feldstein and Gaines needed to come up with a story every day by 5 p.m. to hand off to the letterer. And if a story, they're batting something out and it doesn't work, they still need something by 5 p.m. So Feldstein is taking a little bit of this story from Ray Bradbury, a little bit of that story, and making something a little different. It might even take some aesthetic piece. Like, there's this like guy that has no bones and is just like a blob. And you start with that and work your way back. You know, that's something that was, you know, the end result of a Ray Bradbury story. And you kind of create your own thing, but the aesthetic comes from that comic. So that's the variations. And then there was Martian Chronicles. So you have all the adaptations of Martian Chronicles stories, but then you have the variants where they were inspired by the Ray Bradbury stuff, but didn't take or adapt the piece wholesale. And then the book that Bradbury was kind of working on while all this stuff was going down was The Illustrated Man. And it was probably collecting short stories that would have been published in like Collier's magazine and various other places. So the stories were out in the wild, and they were able to play around and adapt those works. But you see how it's all laid out here. It's not linear in terms of publication date or anything. It's more about Ray Bradbury's bibliography than anything else.
They do a great job, though, with the meta information of like what issues this appeared in, what year it appeared. I like all that stuff, and there's so many reprints at this point in my collection that don't do that.
Yeah.
And I'll be digging around being like, well, when was this story done? And it's so frustrating when that info's not there.
It's true.
They do a great job cataloging all of that here.
Yeah. I mean, Fantagraphics, it has become a proper book publisher at this point. And I feel like this book is an evidence of that. Like, this is going to sell to a different audience than those other EC books that they have done. And they've made a very, like, this is the final statement kind of package. Not too long ago, I found a video on YouTube that probably anybody could find if it's still up there, where there's interviews with all the people from EC Comics who are still alive. It starts off with Marie Severin talking. Then it goes through Al Williamson, Feldstein, Jack Davis, lots of people. And on that channel is like a 1-hour video with Ray Bradbury, chilling with Al Feldstein, looking through old comics and artwork. So like that's a good companion video to watch after you see this one. But Bradbury, being a part of fandom in the early days, the reason why we probably still get to go to San Diego Comic-Con is because his speaking fee was quite expensive, and those dudes like Shel Dorf and the original sort of stewards of San Diego Comic-Con did not have that money to burn to get him to show up. So Bradbury proposed, if you make your consortium a nonprofit organization, I could donate my time, I will forego my speaking fee to show up there, but you got to give your the profits to charity or whatever, feed the rest of the business. When you create a nonprofit, you have to have a charter, and you have to abide by that charter. So San Diego Comic-Con is stuck with us now, the comic people. Like, if that charter was not created, don't think for a second that they wouldn't get some new loot crate kind of company to take up Fantagraphics table, and Penthouse Magazine to take up Top Shelf's booth or something like that. We still get to be a little cancer on that huge monster because of the finagling that was done in the 70s to get Ray Bradbury to show up to your convention. And him being a friend of Ray Harryhausen, who's also a fanboy, you get to get him also. All that stuff is talked about in this front matter here. Which
I love that content.
Great context.
Mm-hmm.
Great context for the stories that you're about to read. It gives you a complete picture of the stuff you're about to see. And another hallmark that they talk about here is, like, Wally Wood becomes Wally Wood by way of the stories that are adapted here. And I think that's an interesting thesis. You know, like, I have to think about that a little bit. It certainly was the sci-fi books that people think of first when you think of Wally Wood, probably. But never really heard it put that way. Crisp black and white.
Joe Orlando here, and
Yeah.
it made me think because we've looked at Swamp Thing recently.
Right.
And Joe Orlando, your editor, it's just so interesting to see kind of the lines of these guys. You know, the careers they go through, the connections that span generations in a weird way.
Yep. All key artists are represented, and you just know that Ray Bradbury was waxing all over the place. This is one of the great shock suspense stories.
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's linger on this for a second. All these corpses with their heads cut off, but also they're all obscured in some way, so you don't see the most grisly part of this image.
Yeah, that's a hard image to compose, man.
For sure it is. But how comical does it look in a lot of ways? Like, these are in horror comics that are known for being like going too far, over the top, and yet a lot of restraint on this full page splash.
It's still the 50s.
And I wonder, man, is there another EC comic that ends on a full page splash? It's a rarity.
It is a rarity. Absolutely, man.
Super fun, though. If you're going to bang one out, I can't imagine a better image.
That's from Shock Suspense Stories. I remember buying this comic at a flea market and getting to that page because I know how to read that shit. You do not have all restraint. Do not look at that last panel.
Jack Kamen may be the MVP for me going through this collection. So many stories by Kamen, and he's not a guy. You think of like the big EC guys, and he's not a guy at the top of my list. Mm-hmm. But he is represented a lot in this collection, and it shines, man. All of this work looks phenomenal, as you can see. Like the black and white is just so crisp. They did a great job, Fanta, on the reproduction. I don't know how this stuff works at this time period now, like how people are getting films to shoot from, whatever.
I think,
but this is just really beautifully reproduced.
I'm quite sure they just scan in the black and white Russ Cochrans at this point, because that's how. Put it this way, that's how they get the Carl Barks stuff. They have all the big blue books, slip cases, and that's how they scan that stuff. So I'm imagining they just use that. Those were very high fidelity. The premium that you were paying for those comics were because they were, making sure there wasn't much bleed. When you have Williamson showing up, man, like that's a hard contender.
Yeah,
in MVPs.
Right, and that's some of the stuff that really I think you show off kind of the reproduction, because he has some of these lines that are just so fine and yet perfectly crisp.
Yeah, I like it on the gloss, man. I like it on the glossy paper.
Yeah, I do too. I was reading this, reading this in bed in the evenings, so I have my reading light hitting it, and sometimes that can be a real problem on gloss. I don't know what's up with this. It's almost a satin finish on top of it.
Yeah.
It doesn't have that high gloss that I normally think of as gloss, coated paper, but yeah, I think this may be a satin finish on the very top of it. And,
oh my goodness!
Boy, does it shine!
This is one of those pieces
classic
that I got at a flea market when I was a kid too. It would be these things that I would get. Like I bought this directly off of the newsstand at Shop and Save in 1991. I'm born in 1992. I cite this comic.
82.
I'm born in 82. I cite this comic as like such a revelation to me about like broadening my comics horizons. You see how they would treat the official adaptations by putting Ray Bradbury's name on that cover very big. Everything about this comic fucking freaked me out. You see how floppy it is because it's so freaking well read. And the story that's in this guy is the Black Ferris. And Jimmy, I believed this shit, man. I was a little brunette boy. I had a little blonde friend, and I showed him this comic, and I'm like, dude, I think this is us. I think it's our job. You know, Monster Squad and Little Monsters and shit was out then. I was like, dude, I think it's our job to hunt demons and shit. Castlevania was out, and we would like go through the woods and pick up debris and be like, I think this is an amulet from Dracula. Like we would do that shit, and this was like our Bible, man. But this is the Ray Bradbury story, and from this issue, ghastly ass image right there.
Yeah.
But it was very wise what Cochran did, because these would be 64-page comics coming out with pretty reliable frequency, man. 3 in a month. You know, pretty sharp. You start them off with a tried and true horror story,
Of course.
and then because it's 64 pages, Cochran's putting his favorite shit in there. Very often you get into sci-fis, but you'll get a shock suspense stories in the back half. You'll get a crime suspense story in the back half. And this is the stuff where I'm like, I'll never get to draw comics. If this is what you have to do to be a successful comic artist, ain't gonna happen. I don't have those tools. I recognize that in like 4th grade. One of those great ones too, man, where it's the quickie stories inside the offices of EC, where it's Gaines and Feldstein meeting a guy who's an enterprising new cartoonist, and you know he sucks or whatever. And it's one of those stories too where it's like 2 short stories in one.
Yeah, I've never seen that story, I don't think.
Yeah,
Makes me really curious.
yeah, it's a good one, man. But I digress.
Speaking of crime suspense stories, right? I think that was my first box set of the EC stuff because
Yeah.
I love Johnny Craig so much. That's the thing too, is like it's so hard to categorize or to rank these artists, because the other MVP in this collection for me is Jack Davis, which is going to be an MVP anytime he appears, but he's in here quite a bit. And of course, I love, you know, Kriegstein's my guy. I think this is the only Kriegstein story in this collection.
Yeah.
Which is a bummer. But another example of like the lines that are being reproduced here. What must these lines have looked like in the original printings of these books?
Just mud.
It's wild what he's putting down on the page, knowing how they're going to reproduce.
This is an important story too, man. Like when I would have storytelling classes at art school, the teacher wanted me to, like, this was a part of the first EC box set that I had. It was the Incredible Science Fantasy one with the Frazetta cover. And he knew that I had that. He's like, dude, bring that in because I got this whole spiel. I want to go on the strength of this. And he's talking about how like the lines like flow
Yeah.
from panel to panel. He called it Gestalt theory, where there would just be these kind of flowing compositions from one panel to the next. But then like there will be bits up here that connect with bits down here to create this like holistic piece, but well composed panels individually and pushing you into the next panel. Plus, you can't sneeze at the fact that the line art is based on the subject matter of the story too, which is something that Kriegstein was very, very sharp at doing.
There is no other person like Kriegstein.
No.
We're so lucky that he got hooked up with EC so that we get to see him shine on many of these stories.
Some of my favorite collaborations in pen and ink are the Severin Elder collaboration.
Brilliant.
Where those guys are when they're singing, you know, they did a Kurtzman War books together a lot. A very few of these other sci-fi stories and things, but like it's just such a pleasing line.
I love whenever guys who are known for one genre will come and do something else.
Yeah.
And that, you know, flipping through and calling attention to them, there you go, man.
Yeah.
Your memory's on display. But it really points to what a great collection this is, because you get representation from basically everybody.
It's true. So you could see like what Jimmy's talking about with the fidelity. Like you got these like little thin lines here. Like look how that stuff, like, okay, this dry brush, it just becomes a pool of black when it's in its final printed iteration.
Yeah, dot gain in the printing game is what that would be called. And in these like newsprint, there's a lot of dot gain.
Yeah.
You know, that's your ink bleeding out once it hits the paper and gets absorbed, like a paper towel.
Such a funny thing where you got to get a little naked boy
Yeah.
outside. Strategic kayfabe leaves.
Similar problem to how do you show decapitated corpses without showing that gaping neck wound. Look at this kind of like, oh man, you know, like the lighting effects there. And this is Kamen.
Oh yeah.
Everybody there could do top-notch work, you know, like if this was a single creator or in a typical Golden Age book where you get 5 or 6 strips, all the EC dudes would be the ones that would stand out. You know, like you buy these books for one artist of this caliber.
Right. This is a classic one, man. I think in the Peter Cushing 1970s Tales from the Crypt movie, I think this is one of the adaptations that's in there. It definitely was adapted on the TV show, where Blind Alley, a blind man gets fucked over. So then you got, you know, the bad guy gets a seed.
Lighting, man, look at that, even on the fingers.
We're gonna need a rabid dog or a dog that's very, very hungry to come running through. This guy running in between, you know, where the insulation is in the house, razor blades sticking out of all the wood. So now there's this ravenous dog chasing him through the razor blade walls. Those are some sick fucks, man.
Yeah, and then some idiot turned out the lights.
Yeah.
That's brutal. That's a great imagery for a kid.
Yeah,
for a
totally.
kid, for a young reader.
So in the inside front covers of EC books, they really trumpeted their artists.
Mm-hmm.
It was like really the first publisher to do so, man. To call attention to their artists, let them sign their works in their own distinctive ways, and they all had very elaborate signatures. Makes you wonder, like, was that Gaines' like show off, because they all had elaborate signatures.
Something that Gaines took heat from other publishers for.
I believe it. Like I could imagine a little NWA like wannabe collusion where like, hey man, you want to make stars out of these guys? So very cool that Ray Bradbury gets his, and you see he was just a kid at this time, man. You know, 33 years old, something like that. Had two collections out, and working on the Illustrated Man, or no, the Golden Apples of the Sun is the one that's going to be coming out from Doubleday sooner than later. By the time of this piece. Got a little afterword by Ray Bradbury, which I think is a transcript of a conversation, at the very first San Diego Comic-Con. That's what we're looking at here, a transcription from that. They would do those little magazine pieces. You can listen to the actual missive from Ray Bradbury himself at this website, comicconmemories.com. There's the letter. And then talking about Ray Bradbury's fandom in the end here.
Wasn't sure what to pull from that correspondence page that's included.
Yeah.
I guess people just appreciating Ray Bradbury back in the day.
Yeah. I think it's just from one specific letter. Like it's not a gang of stuff. All this is the stuff that's talking about like it's a Wally Wood article.
Right.
Just talking about how he sort of came into his own.
Yeah, that evolution over a couple years.
A little bit of artisan edition type energy.
Yeah, always great to see this kind of stuff. You know, and I've mentioned this a couple times, but you can see what would have been like the blue line.
Sure.
And maybe they were gray printed
gray,
at the time. And that would have like some of the ruled lines and things like that on them. So early on, the comics were branding their boards and passing them out.
There goes your covers. I guess these are the ones where they're stealing. You'll see Ray Bradbury's name all big. Rosetta paperback covers. For Bradbury, dude. It's a sphere of influence, Jimmy.
How smart is it on not just Bradbury's part, but also EC's when they're like, yeah, let's keep doing this and let's put the name on the cover.
Oh, totally.
You know, it's just...
Bill
it's what
Gates
you
ain't
want
no
to
dummy.
see the solution. Yeah, but so frequently that's not how these things would be handled, right?
Yeah, listen, Bradbury, the only reason he didn't sue is he didn't want to spend the money. That's such a revelation. These late period paintings that Feldstein would do, I used to get the Russ Cochran catalogs, and these originals would be for sale, and I couldn't believe it because, like, even as a kid, like, they weren't that, it was like $2,000, which is like, that's like couple years allowance, but it's not so much. If I had that money, I would buy that, no problem. Really good Reader's Digest, like bios for everybody, and it's everybody. Like Fanta is legit, man. So like you're getting Roy Krenkel bios, even though his name ain't nowhere on the printed comic. They know that the Flegel gang is putting this shit together, and that Roy Krenkel was drawing those backgrounds.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's almost revising some of the credit boxes.
Yeah.
Because I think that Krenkel is cited in that table of contents under a couple of those stories that he worked on.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's gets a name call out in the back.
Yeah.
You want to call... does he? Am I a
Roy
liar?
Krenkel.
Okay, yeah. Carl Wessler is like one of the writers that would be doing some of the adapting.
Yeah, like I say, they have come so far in these kind of like reprints and archival material and the background material. It really adds to a book like this.
Great package. All the Ray Bradbury stories. It makes so much sense that this exists. And for your Bradbury fans at home, man.
This is one of those gifts, like I always think, like when I was a kid, it was like, you know what? Should only buy comics for everybody.
Yeah.
But it's a challenge. This would check off a lot of lists, you know,
Yeah.
for the sci-fi fans, for the readers in your life that maybe aren't into comics yet, but do enjoy some genre work. This would be a beautiful gift book.
It's the truth, and shouts to Uncle Mike Catron for sending us a couple copies to show off, man. Very proud to share this with the Cartoonist Kayfabe audience. I'm gonna cut real quick, and then bring this back. But there it is. Kayfabers, like, follow, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the bell. We can notify you when new vids are available. And we do have a Patreon for our biggest supporters out there. You are, if you're part of that, you could be watching us stream these recording sessions live. You get all the videos before anybody else does. Completely mitigates the kayfabe effect. And Jimmy, tell the people what you have out there.
Hulk Grand Design, Street Angel Princess of Poverty. Pre-order, reserve those books at your local comic shop or wherever you buy books. Street Angel Deadliest Girl Alive and the Plain Janes, also available and in print now. You can join me on patreon.com/JimRugg, where you can see more of my original art. You can download out-of-print zines and mini comics. I just posted some Blue Line templates that are free for anybody to download and use. And you can keep up with my upcoming comics there on my Patreon.
Red Room Crypto Killers issue 1 is being solicited to your local comic shop at this very moment. Murder on the dark web for fun and profit is the name of the game. With Red Room Comics, you can hit my Patreon up. I'm serializing the new Red Room stuff before it hits paper. $3 for the archive there. There are 2 existing Red Room trade paperbacks out there. Red Room The Antisocial Network and Red Room Trigger Warnings. Hip Hop Family Tree is celebrating its 10-year anniversary this year. Thanks for pumping up those numbers on the Amazon aftermarkets. X-Men Grand Design, 3 volumes of that in existence, and you'll find the occasional WYSIWYG if you look good and hard enough. Jimmy, what else do we have out there, dude?
Subscribe to the Cartoonist Kayfabe e-newsletter at the links below this video. You can also find Cartoonist Kayfabe t-shirts, mugs, stickers, fanny packs, and more merch at our spread shop. That link is also under this video.
Fantastic way to support the channel. Given those marching orders, Jim, we'll be on our way.
Read more comics.
Boom. And we're going to be shooting 2 vids with Uncle Klaus. You guys are going to get those videos before anybody else. Jimmy, make that a priority video when you do your edit session. I say we hang out for just a very small amount of time because I would like to not completely feel the pressure of rushing to set up that or shoot with Klaus.
Yeah, I see somebody has the DC Guide to Penciling Comics.
Yeah.
And I think that's Klaus, but he also has an inking, which I picked up not too long ago, and maybe something to talk as we continue conversations with Klaus Janson, maybe something to walk through. But we're going to get a lot of that insight today, I think, whenever we talk page by page with him on a couple of these books.
The beauty of Klaus Janson in conversation with us is that he is also a teacher, a long studied teacher at School of Visual Arts, so he could talk the talk. He's not going to be a stammering kind of artist that doesn't have words to back up what he's talking about. Like, we're going to have a very flowing, beautiful conversation. We got along with him so well during our shoot interview. It's really nice. This is a great wrinkle in Cartoonist Kayfabe to bring guests back. You know, you can't just do a career retrospective every year with a guy. Get them back and just have a flowing conversation about some comics.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's you know, looking at pages that they've done, what a way to start, you know, as a starting point for conversation.
It's true. And Klaus did not have a chance to look at it. Like, whenever we are doing these early sessions, like, we're getting up and going to work. Like, I'm not checking emails, but I do see that I got some emails from Klaus. And he sent off a bunch of color guides and sent off some Frank Miller breakdowns and shit from that Daredevil. So as much as possible, we're going to weave that stuff into the videos.
It's wild to think that stuff exists, and like the majority of it is never seen.
It's true.
Like, I don't know how it should be seen. You know, maybe like it doesn't work 30 years ago, but at this point, like, there should be an intern there working Klaus's like art files,
Yeah.
and going through and just like making that Sean Howe kind of blog or whatever, you know, like show this stuff, because wow,
We're missing a gigantic piece of Alan Moore's body of work with not being able to read every script. Going through the Killing Joke script is such a freaking pleasure. It really is it feels private, and that's a question too, is like, we'll do a video about that book, but like, sure, Alan Moore sold it to a guy, you know, he has his signature on it, he got some money for it, whatever, but like, it's a note to Brian Bolland, and like, should that be seen? You know what I mean? Like, does he? Yeah, he probably doesn't want it to be. Like, morally, it could be an issue. Business-wise, it's not for DC. But, like, I'm so glad to have it, you know? I'm so glad to be able to read that thing. And it's really pretty sweet. Like,
I don't know how you'd unpack any of that, like the legality, morality.
it's just a conversation.
No, I mean like the permission to reproduce it.
Right.
Because it must be something that's more sent to Boland, and then Boland allowed to be reprinted by DC.
Like he says in the shoot interview that like the script got sold. He says who owns it, and you know, it's the copy. So Brian Boland knew the guy that owns it. It came from Alan Moore. Like I don't know how that part worked, but
the more important thing, the making of comics part. Do you look at those, like, read that script and think, like, what's the benefit of this script as a creator who's writing and drawing your own work?
Yeah.
Is it a benefit to write a script of that nature, even if you're the guy? Because, like, the script that I'm working on now,
Yeah.
right, I wrote, but it'll be, like, it might be a couple words to make something clear to me, to break down, like, okay, I want 3 panels that show this sequence or whatever. But it's very minimal compared to something like an Alan Moore script, where part of it is you're communicating to somebody and you're sort of, you know, representing all kinds of stuff in that text. But I wonder, from a practical make standpoint, like, how valuable it is to, like, look at your story this way, you know, look at your story through words only, or through prose, through this or that, you know, just as a one more tool in the in the maker.
Here's the thing about what I've gleaned from it so far. Is I think he does his 8.5 by 11 comics himself first, because Alan will be like, I worked out that we're not going to show Batman until page 4, and there's like all this language where there's a previous piece to what you're reading on that page. I'm assuming that's the rough type comic or whatever. Like, not even a longhand script, but like, you know, the comic part, because he's talking about all the stuff that he worked out. So I think he's making his comic and then trying to look at that panel, that thumbnail, and try to describe exactly like what a better artist would fill that space with. Because the compositions are very simple. It's very left, right, back, forward, kind of 3D, you know, coming at us, or left to right.
It makes sense, right? What else is there?
Yeah. The stuff, like, he's talking about the books that are on the shelves and stuff in the like on the secretary's desk. Stuff that you won't even look at on the comic, where she's shuffling for a cigarette, and when they walk by out of nervousness, like, he puts that in there. You don't even really notice it in the book. But one part on that piece that I did always notice is how James Gordon kind of like obliged, like gives her an affirmation. That is not in Alan Moore's script. Like, that's a piece that I notice, but it's a piece of acting that Brian Bolland adds. So it is a true collaboration.
Sure.
Brian Bolland is bringing stuff to the piece there. The part you were talking about with Batman bringing the chair over, that was a full page splash in Alan Moore's script, but Brian Bolland decided to decompress a couple of panels that Alan Moore had laid out so that there's a tier of 3 panels on top of that page. Like that was a Brian Bolland choice.
Yeah.
It's fascinating because I'm one for one. I'm reading the thing and then I'm like looking at that panel, reading the next description, reading that, like looking at that panel, going through it meticulously to see like who's doing what, and it makes me respect both of those guys even further. And I need to read every Alan Moore script. Like that's what I'm saying. There's a whole piece of comics that's missing by not having access to all of his work. When I was going through this, I went on Amazon. I'm like, okay, Absolute Watchmen. Does that have the script? And then I'm like, Dark Knight Returns. Like I'm gonna do the same thing with the Absolute Batman Year One, and see the Frank Miller approach, because it is a letter to Brian Bolland. And as a creative guy, like I wonder how I would respond to that, because am I like, let's get to the fucking point here. You're being cheeky about like I'm drinking my cigars and dabbing out my cognac, but like I need to know what I need to fucking draw in this panel, man.
Yeah, I've seen artists, and it might have even been Mazzucchelli, that talk about going through the script and sort of like underlining or highlighting like this is the drawn part or this is the piece that makes the panel.
Yeah.
Like especially if it's written maybe more like prose.
Right.
You know, and you're breaking down the panels maybe from it. So I've seen that done. You know, the Alan Moore stuff that you're describing, though, especially if he's doing some kind of rough sketch first, it makes me think like he's basically doing the Marvel method, because he's loosely drawing the story idea, and then he's going back in and he's essentially writing the script for it.
Yeah, here's what I think he's doing.
Which is real interesting.
I think he's long-handing like an idea of like panel 1, panel this, panel da, and then he's visualizing it. So he's like looking at this thing and then just imagining the environment of like what can be in there. And to me, reading that stuff, it's an enthusiastic letter. I would look forward to every page that Alan would send me and be very excited. I thought it would be a fun
I think Bissett talked about that in the interview.
Yeah, and it's classic. You could read that in so much. Like we haven't got to those issues of Wizard yet, where like, you know, Joe Duffy and people are like, you got to inspire your artist. Like that's a popular philosophy.
I again go back to how do I apply this to myself?
Yeah.
And my thought is like I'm sitting at home right now with what would be like that longhand first kind of like rough script and very rough.
Yeah.
And then I've got my thumbnails.
Yeah.
On the same script.
Yeah.
And now in my head it's like almost like, all right, now go write the detailed script, because like it will reveal things that I won't think of when I'm in my drawing hat.
It's true.
And you know, you just want to know this stuff. Like I always say, like you get to the end of your story, like you're done with it. That's when you know it all.
Dude.
And it's like, but you can't apply it then.
Yeah,
like you got to know as much as you can before you draw the page.
Yeah.
Because once it's drawn, unless you're going to redraw it, it's like that's the page.
There's this part like, and it puts he's planting seeds. So it cuts from the asylum to that carnival or whatever, and Alan Moore's like, you know, I'm picturing this is like November. It's cold out. We've only ever seen, even with Marshall Rogers, even with Neil Adams changing up the gear, like we've only really ever seen Joker in this kind of garment. But like, come up with something different. He needs something more. It's wintertime. You can go as crazy as you want and try to design something completely different. But if the purple works, like that's fine. But it's cold, like so it can't just be like the regular thing. He has a name for the guy who's like the real estate dude, and says that he's an underworld real estate. He makes shady deals for real estate properties and things, and has like sort of kind of a little bit of a story for that dude and how the type of guy that dude is. It's cool, like, you know, and as far as your question goes, I know it's rhetorical, but you know, it's all about creative capital. And like, do you shoot your load at that writing stage and just be like, fuck it, I'm done. Like, I don't have any more energy for this. Like, that's the only question. I am very interested in writing myself a script this way and to try to figure that part out. Because like, even at the very beginning, there's a couple of paragraphs before panel 1, and Alan Moore's talking about like, I see Batman not as like an athlete, but he's able to do athletic things in spite of his giant bulky form. I want his musculature. I want him to rival Superman in terms of like the bulk and on there, and I want him to be even more extraordinary in that he could do anything athletic with that kind of bulk on his carcass. He also, by the way, I always think of the Batmobile as like the Brian Bolland thing, like he's talking about. Alan Moore is like, it'd be cool to have that battering ram gimmick on the hood. Like, I like that thing. So it's great, man. It's a great book. Like, guys, we're going to do an absolute Batman episode for sure. So if you have not gotten the book yet, like, just take this as a gentle reminder that maybe you want to do that. It's not so expensive. It's $50 brand new. But I got my copy for $20 off of Amazon the second after we recorded with him. Like, as soon as you left, I'm like, I need this thing, man, because that script, getting those scripts, I think, one of the things I was going to bring up on the weekly was, like, it crossed my mind, like, when I started reading, like, what if we put it out, like, use the Alan Moore script and do your own Killing Joke? If you did, it'll look like Brian Bolland's Killing Joke. It's like that, like, if you cannot divorce the two. It's pretty fucking
you
tight.
really have to find like the Alan Moore script that was unproduced. Remember whenever
Twilight of the Gods or whatever, man.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I have a copy of that sitting around.
We got to do an episode on that. Tom, like, we're threatening to do it for so long, and Tom finally did it on his own. That's his breakout video. It's got 30,000 views.
Really?
Yeah, it's his biggest video.
That's interesting. If we did one, I feel like we need to be stockpiling for the next Tom appearance.
Yeah.
And that could be a thing to revisit with him, because like I bet his opinions have developed further. Sure. You know, once you put this stuff out there and get the feedback and see what people respond to.
That's probably a Tom vid.
Yeah, that'd be a good one.
I read it this past week. I didn't like it.
No?
It's hard to read, man. Like, it's Kirby's
That's near the end.
Yeah, Kirby's got some thing, like, he needs a little editorial help.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Cool.
Kayfabers, we are going to cut out. We're going to wish us luck with Klaus. I think it's going to be a fun chat. We're going to do 2 vids with him. Probably put the first one out Sunday, the next one out Monday, something like that. But we're going to prioritize those videos for the edit. So those will be the first ones that we put together for you guys probably. So take care. Read more comics. Wish us luck. And throughout the day, you're going to start to see a little peppering of videos. Thank you guys for supporting the channel. We'll see you next week. Next week, we got a giant. If it goes off without a hitch, we have a gigantic, important recording session that we need you to be with us for. We'll start a little bit later. We don't have to start off at 5 a.m. for the schedule of the recording. It'll be about noon Eastern Standard Time when we talk with our guest.
Not only the some feedback from the King Kayfabers for prep, we're going to need everybody's help on selling this one. Yeah. Because to me, this is a video that should have legs.
Importantly, historic.
Yeah.
Cross-cultural.
That's what I'm saying. Like, this should find an audience beyond the really inside comics folks. So, yeah, it'll be a fun week.
Let's go set
They're all fun weeks, Ed.
Yeah.
This has been good. I feel like we've come out strong 2023.
Plenty more planned, man. It just ain't gonna stop. Like, once you got like one heavy hitter, other dudes cannot say no. They want to be part of the pedigree, man.